What's going on, folks? Welcome to another edition of the TKO show here on TKOTalk.com. It's been a while since we did one of these, but it is that time of year. I'm looking at the calendar right now, and it is the middle of October, which means NBA season is right around the corner. 30 teams tipping off in just under 2 weeks now. It is here. It is ready. We are ready, ladies and gentlemen. Start drafting your fantasy teams. Dust off the old jersey. It's time to head out on the court. And we are going to rank me and my trusty sidekick, my compatriot, my previous guest this time last year where we did the super mega really long NBA preview. None other than one of my best friends in the whole wide universe. None other than the kill switch, Rob Piazza. Rob, get closer to the mic for God's sakes.
Hello, everybody.
I hope you heard that because you might not get any closer than that. So, we're sharing one mic. This is how we do it, guerrilla style. We are going to rank every NBA team from 30 to 1. Number 1 being the best overall team record-wise, not necessarily who we think is going to win the championship. We might talk about that as we keep going here. But let's start out with the basement. Poop Town. None other than number 30. And it's a familiar place. It's the same place we started last year. And that's good old Philadelphia and the old 76ers. Some things change and some things just stay the same. Even though they've drafted a new crop of talent, it's the same old tankers. And that's the 76ers. And it's a multi-year plan, they're going to keep saying. It's going to keep their coach employed. It's going to keep Sam Hinkie, the GM, employed. And it's going to keep losing basketball games, making those fans very disappointed. And remember the good old days of Allen Iverson and Eric Snow. And who else was on that team?
Dikembe Mutombo, Matt Geiger.
The corpse of Dikembe Mutombo. Wow, Aaron McKee. They have a new squad, although it's very similar to the one they had a year ago, led, of course, by the defending Rookie of the Year, Michael Carter-Williams. They drafted a few guys. They had multiple first-round picks, and they ended up with the number 3 overall pick and taking Kansas center Joel Embiid, who has I forget what his injury actually is, but I believe it's a back injury. And he will probably not play this season at all. And he also has a foot issue. He had foot surgery. He's been in and out of a walking boot. So we're probably not going to see the number 3 overall pick this year. But we are going to see their first round pick, Nerlens Noel, his NBA debut after missing all of last year. Apparently he's going to be their starting power forward, along with Henry Sims, who got a lot of playing time last year after being cut by the Cavaliers. And he's going to be a featured part of this team, which is pretty indicative of how bad they're actually going to be. Hollis Thompson returns. They traded Thaddeus Young, who was probably their best player last year, for Luke Richard and Maba Mute, who's actually been a bit of a mentor to Joel Embiid off the court, and Alexei Sved, who was really terrible last year. So he'll fit right in with this squad. Michael Carter-Williams, I mentioned. Tony Roten had a pretty decent year. You got Sved. Their second-round pick, KJ McDaniels, is probably gonna start for them. Their shooting guards are not very good. Elliot Williams, former Trailblazer, I believe, is a part of this squad. Malcolm Lee. Just no real NBA players aside from probably Noel, Michael Carter-Williams, maybe Roten, and we'll see what happens with McDaniels. They want him to be the 3-and-D type of guy that plays some defense, shoots some threes, and spreads the floor for them. Not a whole lot of hope in Philly, and I didn't mention their second first-round pick, Dario Saric, who will not play this year. He'll be overseas once again. So they are out on this year, as they were last year. They're planning for the future, and they're probably going to end up right back in the top of the lottery. Not a whole lot to really say about them, but is there anything to be excited for Sixers fans? Is it just the return of Nerlens Noel and maybe some development in Michael Carter-Williams?
No, not really.
Nope, that's pretty much it.
I'm interested to see what Noel does in his first year. And if Embiid even steps foot on the court, it'd be interesting to see him this year. But I don't know how they're going to score besides Carter Williams. So I just agree. They're going to be probably the worst team in the league this year.
And I actually heard rumors that they're shopping Michael Carter Williams, so they might just want to get rid of all players that even could potentially play in the NBA. This is like beyond even long term. I can't even see the day where they're a competitive team. It's gonna be like they're gonna be like the best team in the East in 2018, and by that time maybe people will have forgotten about this. But I'm going to try to make a concerted effort to not talk that long about all these terrible teams that I think we're going to spend more time talking about than actually watching this year. So, just a little sidebar. For each team, I'm going to try to do like a what is exciting to watch in terms of like if you got League Pass at home, you have the League Pass free trial, you're going around the league, you want to see, who should I look for on each team to be excited about. I think we mentioned him, Nerlens Noel, his high top, his blocking, shot blocking ability. That's pretty much all you're going to want to see here, and they're going to be down by so many points. He's going to have to block a lot of shots to keep them in games. So let's move along here. The 29th ranked team is the old Utah Jazz, who made a few moves. They were obviously at the top of the draft last year. They took Dante Exum from Australia, point guard, shooting guard combo, very large, like 6'6" point guard, combo guard. They also had a second pick later on. They took Rodney Hood, who slipped quite a bit from Kentucky, I believe. Real good shooter. A lot of people were surprised that he dropped that far in the draft. And their other big move this year was re-signing Gordon Hayward for 4 years and $63 million. He was
Too much.
Yeah, too much is what Rob said, and I agree. But the Charlotte Bobcats, I'm going to do that so many times this year. Over under on the amount of times I called them the Bobcats is about 45, and I'll take the over. The Charlotte Hornets, former Charlotte Bobcats, offered him that deal. So if the Jazz had to keep him, they had a match. It was that simple, and that's the market for these guys. I mean, Traylon Parsons got a lot of money. Even guys like Jody Meeks and C.J. Miles and Ben Gordon, like these guys are getting big money. Like these wing players that can shoot and can, at least hold their own on defense. Maybe take Ben Gordon out of that conversation, but these guys are getting paid a lot of money. They're a premium in the league now, and for whatever reason, Gordon Hayward got that money. So he's going to be their building block. He's what they're going to be building around. They have Trey Burke, who they drafted last year, who played okay. I think his ultimate destiny is probably like the second point guard off the bench or the first point guard off the bench for teams. Probably a really good six-man. Hit some big shots. Just he's really small and he still can't really shoot. He's growing, but I don't see him as a starter. They're going to see what Exum has. I don't know if those two guys can play together. They're both very ball dominant. This is one of the things where they also drafted Alec Burks like 3 years ago. It's like you got three kind of combo guard, point guard, shooting guard types. None of them are great shooters. Burks is probably the best shooter of them all. It's like if you combine them all, there's probably a really good NBA starting point guard in there, but it's not really how it works. So they traded for Steve Novak, just kind of a good locker room guy at this point. That's about it. As Rob does the Aaron Rodgers rip-off Steve Novak championship belt celebration. They got Trevor Booker, who's a decent big man. And then their big guys, Favors, Gobert, and Cantor are still there. We're going to see if those guys have grown any. But we saw that last year, and I was actually kind of excited about them last offseason because this was the first year they were moving away from Al Jefferson and Paul Millsap, and those guys both ended up being all-stars. So maybe it wasn't the best time to move away from them so quickly. But I don't know if either of those guys is that good either. Like, they have a new head coach in Quinn Snyder. He was a Hawks, Lakers assistant. He was the head coach of Missouri a couple years back. we'll see if he can get anything more out of these guys than Todd Corbin did. But the same question I had for the Sixers: what's the future looking like for the old Utah Jazz? And Karl Malone and John Stockton is not the answer, just for the record.
Grim is my answer.
Grim.
But the one thing I'm looking forward to is seeing Exum, because he clearly played well overseas. He's so young. It's always fun to see how such a young talent can come over to the NBA, and if he could fit in right away like some do, or if he's going to get lost in the shuffle. But I think the kid could definitely play from the little bit of video that they have on him. So I'm curious to see how he fits in. I think sooner rather than later he'll end up being the main piece of that team, because as they start losing games, you're going to have to play him more and more and throw him in there. So I think they're not going to win a lot of games, but they could be exciting to watch Exum when he's on the court.
Yeah, and here's the thing: is like I think he just turned 18, so year 3 in the NBA he'll be 21. Like, that's absurd to think about. And he's, I feel like we're gonna be too quick to judge him this year, because in summer league and preseason he does look a little overwhelmed. He does look like he's still trying to figure out what the NBA is all about, and NBA competition and body size and defense, and there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of elements to this game. Not everybody's Anthony Davis or Kevin Durant that'll just step in and instantly be a superstar. And having all those guards that are pretty similar, Burks, and himself, he's going to have to find his place, and it's not his fault that the GM is just taking point guards over and over again.
I'd look for him around the All-Star break, maybe a little bit after the All-Star break, to get a little more playing time, to have it somewhat figured out, at least his role in this team this year.
I mean, if I'm the GM, I'm going to try to shop Alec Burks. They don't seem to like him. Like, they took Trey Burke, even though he played pretty well as a rookie, and he didn't really even get playing time, but in the playing time he did get, he looked good, and then they just, went right off and took Burke in the lottery the next year. I think there's going to be a market for him. I mean, you can move Hood to the 2. You can move Hayward to the 2 if you want. And they don't have a lot of depth, and they're not going to have depth because they're not a good team. But this is, one of those years. It's just a transition, and they're going to build around these guys and see what happens. The league pass guy for this team, I would say, is a guy that I don't even know if I've mentioned yet, and that's Rudy Gobert, who had a really good FIBA World Cup for France. He could be one of those guys that kind of takes the Larry Sanders type leap a couple of years ago, from just prospect to dude that could potentially be a building block of a young team. He's just a nasty shot blocker. He's got something like a 7'6" wingspan, going all Jay Billis on it real quick. Having that rim protector in the league is just so important, and you can do so much going from that. Then again, I said the same thing about Larry Sanders last year, and he smoked a bunch of weed and fought a bunch of dudes in bars, and now is a joke in the league. So we'll see how that goes. Can't really get any worse than that for Mr. Gobert. And just being on that France team with Diaw and not Parker wasn't there, but Diaw, Batum, and those guys, Ibaka, just that alone is a big thing, and I think we'll talk about that a little more with some of the U.S. guys as we go along. Number 28, I'm spending too much time on these damn bad teams again. Orlando Magic. They drafted Aaron Gordon, number 4, who was one of my favorite guys in the draft. Just such a prospect and exciting. He's, spoiler alert, he's going to be my league pass guy for the Magic. Elfrid Payton at number 10, who was a guy that just came out of nowhere and went to a small school, Louisiana Lafayette, and just kind of grew in that pre-draft process and eventually became a top 10 pick. He's looked really good in summer league and preseason, so they might have something there. And I said it last year, point guard is the only position they really needed in terms of a young guy to build around. They might have their core built right now in Peyton, Oladipo, Tobias Harris, or Mo Harkless, whoever kind of makes that extra leap. Aaron Gordon and Nikola Vucevic. They added a few veterans. Channing Frye they paid a lot of money to. They brought in Evan Fournier, who was on the Nuggets last year, young player who's had some moments. Luke Ridnour, Ben Gordon. So they got some veterans in here, along with the rooks and the young guys. And we'll see. This is going to be a consistent theme here. We're going to see how they do. And it felt like this group has so much young talent, but they just have continuously been bad, and they haven't made any leaps. I think it's time. I think this is do or die for their coach. What the fuck's his name? Well, whatever. It's Jacques Vaughn. I knew I'd get to it eventually. This is the do or die year for him because he's a guy that, if you can't develop the young guys and you keep ending up in the lottery, then what's the point? You might as well just overpay a bunch of veterans and try to make the 8th seed. You got to develop these young guys. You can't just, end up in the lottery because, it's pointless. People talk about the Oklahoma City thing and just ending up with, 3 good lottery picks and ending up with Harden, Ibaka, Westbrook, and Durant. But if those guys hadn't been developed properly, then, you just got 4 young, promising talents. And if they want that kind of scenario, they're going to have to do a little bit better in that department. But the league pass guy for this team, I mentioned, is Aaron Gordon. He's just so explosive. He probably is going to be immediately one of the best dunkers in the league. He drew a lot of Blake Griffin comparisons. But don't forget about Oladipo. Before I continue just this rant and rambling, out of all the young guys on this team, who are you most excited about?
Like you mentioned, for me it's Gordon, mostly just because of his play above the rim, offensively and defensively. He could get up there and block some shots, defend. So I'm just mostly excited about him.
He does really know where to go on defense.
He's a smart player.
Yeah,
and as he continues to develop, he'll get better offensively, get a game with his back to the basket. So it's definitely going to be fun to see him grow into an NBA player.
For such a young guy in college, you saw just like the feel for the game. He drew some Kirilenko comparisons also for that. And, I would say in his prime, Andre Kirilenko is one of the best IQ guys that there were in the league. Just defensively, and he wasn't a great offensive player, but he knew how to make what he had work and to be effective and efficient. Year one probably won't be that. He's pretty low on the depth chart. He's like 3rd on the power forward depth chart. We'll see what happens with Channing Frye. They try to move him to 5 and try to be a stretch 5, and he's always had a bit of an injury history, as well as their starting center, Nikola Vucevic. So how do they move those guys around? I think Gordon could play some center just because with his defensive ability and shot blocking, but you probably don't want to keep him there. I think ultimately he's a power forward. Some people thought he should have been a small forward, so we'll see what happens there. But I think it all comes down to Jacques Vaughn and can he develop these guys, and otherwise it's just a team of also-rans. Number 27, Milwaukee Bucks, taking Jabari Parker, number 2 overall. That was their big move of the offseason, as well as hiring new head coach Jason Kidd. They added a few veterans, nothing really to write home about. Kendall Marshall, Jared Dudley, and Jared Bayless. They were a disaster last year. Some people had them as a playoff team because they were a playoff team the year before, but that quickly disappeared and realized that this was just a debacle. Larry Drew could not coach his way out of a paper bag. They had a lot of injuries. Ersan Ilyasova being one of them. He really had to. He really dropped from the year before. He was like a borderline all-star and just fell off the face of the earth. I talked about Larry Sanders. He was a disaster on and off the court. O.J. Mayo gained about a whole nother person. I think he ate Jared Bayless last year and proceeded to play along with him. They had a few surprises, most of which being the Greek freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo. One of my favorite names to say, for sure. One of my favorite players in the league to watch. And I'm pretty sure he just grew an inch, me saying that. That kid is absurd. And they're trying to get him to play point guard. Have you seen this? If you're gonna move someone to point guard, having Jason Kidd be your head coach probably isn't the worst thing in the world. But I think that shows their trust in Brandon Knight and Kendall Marshall, and Nate Walters is you're going to move your, all rookie team small forward shooting guard to point guard. I'm interested to see what happens. You think he's only going to get better? You saw it last year. He's just still so raw. Most people didn't even expect him to play in the NBA for a couple years. He came right over and played well. Didn't play as much with Team Greece as a lot of people thought he would in the World Cup, but still got some meaningful minutes, playing against some good international competition and just more experience. It's just more court time. Still can't really shoot, but just a physical freak. And I'm really curious to see how he plays with Jabari. I think Jabari, a lot of people have said this. It's not an unpopular opinion. He's one of the most NBA ready rookies to come along in a long time, and I think he's pretty much a lock to win Rookie of the Year because he's probably going to score 20 on this horrendous team. Is there any doubt that Jabari is Rookie of the Year? We're going to talk about some more guys, but if you had to put odds on it, Jabari 3-1.
Jabari would definitely be my leading candidate, and like you said, I think him coming in, they know he's going to be a scorer. I think that's only going to help Giannis. I'm not even going to attempt to say his name, but you know who I'm talking about. Okay, that's what I'll call him, the Greek Freak. I think it's only going to smooth his transition if they really are going to attempt to move him to point guard. It's going to make it easier. You know what guy the ball is going to go to on offense, So it will take the pressure off him actually having to run the offense because there's going to be a lot of Jabari Parker isolations going on this year, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and you can do so many things with him. I mean, he's going to get those hot shooting nights where he's just going to take a bunch of threes. You can post him up. He can play 4. He can play 3. Probably play 2 if you really want to. I don't even know if we really know how good of a coach Jason Kidd is yet. But that Brooklyn team was kind of a debacle, and he turned them into a team that got to the second round. So of the playoffs, that is. I think it remains to be seen how he's going to do with a young team because he had just a veteran squad with a bunch of dudes that knew where to be and what to do. Now, there's a sprinkling of veterans in there. Your Dudleys, your Mayos, your Baylesses, Ilyasova, Pachulia. But other than that, Sanders is still really young and he's a head case.
Those two also, those few also aren't the caliber of Pierce and Garnett, which he had to help coach on court last year.
Yeah, and those are guys he played against, he played with. Maybe it's almost going to be a relief for him to not be coaching his peers and to be coaching young, impressionable guys. Because he did a pretty good job with some of the young guys last year on the Nets. Plumlee being the main one who played really, really well last year and was playing crunch time in the playoffs against the Heat. So I'm curious to see what happens with him. I mean, that's the main story is, Jabari wanted to go to Milwaukee. Is he going to be the face of the franchise? They haven't really had one of those guys since, they tried to turn Brandon Jennings into one. That didn't work. Now he's going to be out of the league in a few years. Probably since Ray Allen, before they had a real, quality face of the franchise. I'll be watching Jabari, and I think he's in a decent environment to at least, put up good numbers. Moving along here, Boston Celtics at number 26. It's still weird to me that we're talking about them as consistent lottery team, considering all the battles that the Heat went through with them in the early 2000s, mid-2000s. We got bounced by them seemingly in the playoffs every year, even though I know it wasn't. They drafted Marcus Smart with their lottery pick at number 6. Some people were surprised he fell that far. I think he's a really good fit for them, especially because Rondo, we don't know. His future is not in Boston. I think that much is clear. They took James Young at 17, who I really like. He's got really good potential as a defender, three-point shooter. Played with Kentucky last year, was probably their second best player behind Julius Randle. The big bizarre move to me was re-signing Avery Bradley for 4 years, $32 million. Don't get me wrong, I like him. Really good wing defender. One of the best defenders of point guards in the league. Probably next to the dude on the Rockets, Patrick Beverly. He's just going to get in your shorts, and he's going to bug you, and he's going to really not make it a fun night. But he's just not an offensive player. Like he got a little bit better as the year went on, and he's still young, but does not have that consistent three-point shot. Isn't really a point guard, but he's not really a shooting guard. I think he's a good player, and he's a good guy to lock up, but it seems like a lot of money. But maybe this goes back to the thing I said about wing players. They just, teams need them, and they're going to spend money to get them. They brought in Marcus Thorin as their, probably their three-point shooter off the bench because they do not have a lot of three-point shooting looking at this depth chart. Brought in Evan Turner also. I don't know why, but, just a veteran to maybe score some points. Gerald Wallace is still there with his terrible contract. Jared Sullinger's there, who showed some flashes of brilliance last year, and just a lot of inconsistency. I think that's the key for the Celtics is to get some consistent play from him because he is probably the bright spot on this team next to Marcus Smart, which, that's probably saying something. But if Smart, Young, and Sullinger can be good NBA players, that's something. That's the start of something. Kelly Olynyk looks like he's going to be their starting center, and he was a disaster last year. You didn't know if he wanted to be a rim protector, a three-point shooter, a pick-and-roll player, and, they're going to have to figure that out quick because if he doesn't have an identity, he's just going to be, the goofy white guy that gets posterized all the time. They traded for Tyler Zeller. Brandon Bass is still there. He's an expiring contract. He's going to be a valuable guy, especially come trade deadline time for these playoff teams that need another big guy off the bench. If Brandon Bass and Rajon Rondo end the year as Celtics, I'll be very surprised. They're just going to try to get these young guys minutes. Smart, Bradley, Young, Sullinger, Olynyk, Zeller. They just want to see what they have. And that's what these young teams are supposed to do. I have a hard time finding a league pass guy in this team. Is it Jeff Green?
For me personally, it's going to be Young. Because watching that team, that young Kentucky team, no pun intended, that young Kentucky team play last year, to me he just came off as the guy with the most poise. Like he's one of the youngest guys out of all of them, and he was in there in big game situations. You watch the championship game, the Final Four, he's the guy making plays in there. So I think he's going to be surprisingly more ready than people think. He came on strong in the tournament last year, and like I said, it's just what it comes down to poise. He could definitely score the basketball. He's got to, we got to see if he can play defense in the NBA. But looking over that roster, if we're going to pick a league pass guy, for me, just because of the uncertainty, but the flashes we've seen, it's going to be him.
Yeah, the problem for him is going to be playing time. I think he'll definitely get it through the last part of the season because they're going to be out of it. But early on, they're probably going to...
potential trades.
Yeah, exactly. Like Jeff Green and Gerald Wallace are probably going to play early on. But both those guys have injury histories, and both of them, we kind of know what they are. Jeff Green is so in and out, inconsistent. He's going to be the guy that scores 35 one night against a playoff team, hit a game-winning shot against the Heat. I don't forget. And then he'll be the next night. He'll go like 1 for 7 with 4 points and 2 rebounds, and he'll give up a bunch of points on the other end. It's so inconsistent. Like you see such flashes of brilliance. Like I thought he could be a potential all-star last year because there wasn't any guys to score. I thought he would, he'd be the guy, and it was far from it.
I thought that was going to be a big loss when he was traded to them for that team, and a big addition for the Celtics, and it just hasn't been.
No. He hasn't stayed healthy. He's not been consistent, and if Brad Stevens, who I think a lot of, can't get that out of you, I don't know who's going to, except probably like Greg Popovich. If he went to the Spurs, he'd be awesome. I bet.
Who isn't, though?
Fair. Next up, we're going to talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves. They had quite the offseason, and not for any good reasons. They drafted Zach LaVine, number 13, who's a very polarizing guy. Some saw him as, a real crazy prospect. Others saw him as like the biggest bust candidate in the draft. Super athlete, just crazy dunks and 3-point shots, and he's like 6'7", and it's like a point guard, shooting guard type. Did not do very well in college, and that is obviously a red flag to people. But the big move of the offseason, obviously, is trading what was thought to be the franchise player in Kevin Love for the number 1 pick in the draft, Andrew Wiggins. They got the first overall pick the year before, and Anthony Bennett, both from the Cavs, and then they finagled a few more pieces to trade for Thaddeus Young also. They added Mo Williams in free agency. Flip Saunders came down from the front office to be their head coach. And now we have a team that a lot of people thought could potentially sneak into the playoffs last year. I believe I picked them to.
Yeah, me too.
Ended up falling right back into the lottery. And I think that was it. I think last year was the do or die year for them in terms of keeping Kevin Love. If they had made the playoffs and been, a surprise and been up there with, competing with his contemporaries, I think he would have stayed, or at least thought about staying. They had a lot of injuries. Rubio, was very on and off. He still is just an anemic shooter. Like, I think percentage-wise, he's the worst shooter ever. And Kevin Martin got hurt for a lot of the season. Budinger was hurt. Brewer was in and out. Pekovic had a long injury. But that actually kind of sparked them to see what they had in Corky Deng, who actually played really, really well the last part of the season. He's going to be kind of one of their pieces going forward, I think, if he gets the opportunity. But they just gave Pekovic that big deal, so he's going to start. They're going to have Thaddeus Young or Anthony Bennett play at the 4. Wiggins or Brewer is going to start at the small forward. Kevin Martin's there, and then you got Rubio. So, if there was like a superstar on this team, i.e. Kevin Love, I would like them, but I mean, they're just too young. I think Kevin Martin and Corey Brewer are going to be trade pieces. Thaddeus Young is immediately probably going to regret leaving Philly, because at least it's a little bit warmer there. And Pekovic is going to get the ball in the post a lot because they're going to have a hard time scoring. Rubio obviously can't score. Martin's, hot and cold, mostly cold. He's going to have that one game where he goes for like 50 and hits 100 threes, but I don't know if that math adds up. Don't quote me on that. And then we don't even know what Andrew Wiggins is. He's a super athlete who can dunk out of the gym. Very good defender, but he's a rookie. He's going to have a hard time figuring out how to score points. They're not going to ask him to. I think Thaddeus Young and Pekovic and Martin are going to handle that load. So at least there's that. At least they give him, probably the fourth or third or fourth option offensively. He's not going to have to carry the team like Jabari does. He'll just get some time to figure some things out. He has a few veterans there to ask questions to, and a terrible coach to lead him. Mm-hmm. Flip Saunders. League pass guy. This is interesting because Rubio's got, even though he's anemic offensively, he's got some of the best passing in the league. Kevin Martin, like I said, can go off for 50 any day. Pekovic is just a man. Thaddeus Young is pretty exciting. Can do a lot of different things. Corey Brewer, I think, actually scored 50 last year. But is it just Wiggins and Levine because they can just put on the dunk show every day?
Yeah, I think there's going to be some highlight reel dunks coming off of some highlight reel assists from Rubio, but that's about it. Personally, I can watch Pekovic rebound all day. Just do the dirty work down low. So that might be my guy, but I think you should just be on the lookout for a lot of Ricky Rubio assists off alley-oops to Levine and Wiggins.
Fake trade alert. First fake trade of the podcast. If you're Oklahoma City, I'm going to bring up the trade machine right now to see if this works. If you're Oklahoma City, you lose Durant for the first month and a half, let's say. Westbrook really is your only offensive player. There's not a lot of depth on that team. They need some scoring. Do you trade Kendrick Perkins, Jeremy Lamb, and Mitch McGary for Nikola Pekovic?
I would take Pekovic over. I mean, the only reason that would hold it up, in my point of view, would be they might be asking Lamb to score some points for them in Durant's absence, which I don't know if that's a good idea or not, honestly. But I think...
Wouldn't you rather have Pekovic's... Okay,
I'd rather have Pekovic over all three of those players.
On that team...
The injury just throws it off for me
on that team, he's probably like 14-11. Would you rather have his 14-11 or the combined stats of those three guys?
Pekovic.
The only small thing is that defensively, he's not great. So you're going up against Duncan.
But Kendrick Perkins, not Kendrick Perkins, Ibaka is there to kind of cover him on that.
But so at least Perkins can beat up
fouls.
Duncan. Beat up Duncan and Dwight and those guys a little bit. I guess Pekovic can too. Yeah, I mean,
I would take that trade.
You gotta make that trade if you're Durant. If you're the only downside is that it's a pretty big contract and it's for a long time.
You could also.
So you're going for it if you make that trade.
You could honestly put Westbrook at the 2 since he plays the 2 anyway. Just he doesn't know it, and Reggie Jackson at the point. And,
I think we're going a little too thunder heavy during our Timberwolves portion right now. But
can you blame us though?
I think. Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But they have some trade pieces there, Minnesota and Brewer, Martin, and I would put in Pekovic. Because I think Gorky Dang's got to play. Like, you want a rim protector in this league, and, I mean, he's got some potential. All right, Sacramento Kings is next. Not a lot to talk about with them. They drafted Nick Stauskas at number 8 from Michigan, who was really, really good this past college year. Really vaulted himself up into the draft, and I don't know, once again, what the Kings are doing. I say this every year.
Does anybody?
No. Well, I guess they do. Well, they think they do. Darren Collison was their big signing in the offseason. Apparently he's going to start for them since they lost Isaiah Thomas. They got former Laker Ramon Sessions, who you're a big fan of. Just kidding. Ben McLemore's still there. He hasn't been ruined as of now. And Stauskas is there backing him up. So you got your 2 young guys playing the same position. That's good.
Always.
Rudy Gay exercises player option. Shocker. Excuse me. So he'll take a lot of bad shots. And then you got 90 power forwards. Jason Thompson, Reggie Evans, Carl Landry, Derek Williams. And your center is DeMarcus Cousins, one of the biggest head cases in the NBA. I don't know how this team fits together. There's not enough shots at all. Their only position that doesn't need the basketball is power forward, with Evans and Landry just muscling people around, getting rebounds, and doing the dirty work. Everyone else is looking to score. Cousins wants his 20 touches. Rudy Gay is going to want his 20 shots. McLemore's still young, so he's not going to be as pushy, but he still is pretty much only effective when he's shooting threes. And Darren Collison is one of the worst shot takers at point guard in the league. I mean, he was in the playoffs. He was taking shots over guys like Blake Griffin and Crawford and sometimes Chris Paul. I mean, I feel like everything's needed to be said about the Kings has been said. The front office is terrible. They want to move the team. DeMarcus Cousins needs a new environment, and I believe they re-signed him to a big deal, so now he's not going anywhere. And then you're just going to surround him with just garbage. I mean, Stauskas and McLemore are smart guys to surround him with because they can shoot. You want shooters around your center. But they play the same position, and neither one is that great defensively. You don't really have a point guard that's going to get the ball to Cousins when he needs it and where he needs it. As much as they can say that's Collison, it's not. And then Rudy Gay's there just taking up space and cap room and shots. It just does not make any sense roster-wise. They're going to lose a lot of games. But I really enjoy watching DeMarcus Cousins. Unpopular opinion. It's fun watching like a classic back-down, post-up center with moves over both shoulders and throwing temper tantrums against Tex.
Well, in the NBA, just the not so distant, memory, you needed that in the NBA. That's the type of center you needed. Someone who could play with their back to the basket. That's the player that you ride to the championship. he's coming off a pretty nice summer playing, international ball, that World Cup of basketball. So we see what he could do in a good environment, like you touched on. The Kings aren't that, unfortunately, but hopefully he can take what he learned from playing with Team USA and keep getting better, maybe inspire some of the teammates around him. But there's only one ball, and too many of the players on that team need it in their hands to be effective. So
yeah, I mean, it's getting better. We got rid of Marcus Thornton, we got rid of John Salmons, we got rid of Travis Outlaw. Like, we're making forward progress. Next year, Rudy Gay will come off the cap, and that's one less guy. They'll have another lottery pick. Hopefully, they'll take a point guard, and then then that will be the start. As bad as that is, like year 6 for DeMarcus Cousins will be when he could really showcase what he has to do because, maturity, I guess, is his big thing. League pass guy, it's got to be DeMarcus. I like Ben McLemore, too. I think he's going to make a jump in the second year, and having Stauskas breathe down his neck for playing time, could actually benefit him because I think he'll have to rise to the occasion. Or maybe Stauskas will try to rise to the occasion and beat him out. One of those guys, I think, is going to be a really good starter. All right, so we're taking still way too much time on the bad teams. We're going to keep moving, but this is not the place to do it because this is your team. Talking about the LA Lakers.
The 2014-2015 NBA I'm just kidding. That's not even...
Yeah, I was going to say, I was really wrong about the Pistons last year, and I'm going to have to eat a lot of crow later. You do not want to eat that much crow next year. Their big offseason move, I guess, was drafting Julius Randle. And then the rest of the offseason, who knows what the fuck they were doing. Just a lot of throwing around money to random pieces. Jeremy Lin, come on over. Steve Nash, you're still here. Ronnie Price, not a bad third-point guard, I guess. Wayne Ellington, yeah, sure, we'll take you. Which I don't think they really pay that much to, but still. I thought he was on the Knicks. I don't even know how he got to the Lakers. Wesley Johnson, they re-signed. Nick Young, they re-signed. Cool, we need more bad shots. Xavier Henry, who was actually really good last year for a week, and then just fell off the face of the earth in terms of injuries, unfortunately. He was really exciting while he was out there, though. Carlos Boozer, after he got amnestied, the Lakers decided to give him $2 million for a guy that's already getting paid $16. That's silly. Julius Randle, like I mentioned, he's there. Ryan Kelly brought him back. He was an embarrassment last year, but they're bringing him back anyway.
Why not?
Jordan Hill, I thought he was pretty decent last year. He's going to be their starting center, along with Bobby Sacre and Ed Davis, who's third right now on the center depth chart. But it would not shock me if he jumped up to number 1 at some point because he's one of the only guys on his team that thinks about defense. I'm going to try to bring up a tweet here. But I thought this basically summed up the Lakers' season. And it involved none other than Wesley Johnson. I want to see if I can find it. So, here we go. It's from Dave Miller. I don't really know who that is, but I think he's a big deal. Oh, he's a former NBA assistant coach, so he's got some credibility. Quote, Wesley Johnson has to be a defensive stopper in all caps. Athletic, long, great instincts, run the lanes, finish, guard the best player, weak side shot blocker. And I believe he followed that up with if the Lakers are going to be successful, that's what needs to happen. If that's what your season is riding on, that's going to end really, really badly because Wesley Johnson is bad at basketball. And in fact, and it's sad that he probably is the best defender on the team, not named Ed Davis. Jordan Hill is okay. Kobe can barely stand at this point. Steve Nash, you informed me, was injured picking up his luggage at the airport. Jeremy Lin is one of the worst defensive players in the league. Wayne Ellington is okay. He'll probably get some run. Nick Young, I'm pretty sure I could score on.
Never played a defense a day in his life.
Nope. Just wants to get them shots up, but kudos to him for hooking up with Iggy. Yeah. Just 3-point hourglass all day. Carlos Boozer, he'll get some rebounds and wear some shoe polish on his head and say, "Give me that!" whenever he gets a rebound. And one! And that's pretty much it. Bob Sacre, best bench celebrator in the league?
Easily.
Oh, wow.
Easily.
Kent Bazemore has some things to say about that.
Yeah, but I'm biased.
They were both on the same bench at one point last year. That's
unreal.
That's unreal. So, things aren't going to go too well for LA. What's the best case scenario for LA?
Kobe wins the scoring title, and I don't care about anything else. To be honest, well, all right, they have a coach that may actually try to teach them defense, so that's one good thing with the hiring of Byron Scott. But Kobe in his advanced age, I still do think he's gonna score in the mid-20s. Honestly, it's Kobe Bryant. Like,
he
you know
has
what I mean?
to. Who else is going?
Exactly. Lynn help out a little bit with offense. Same thing with Nick Young, but I think they win more games than last year. Actually, with a healthy Kobe, how can you not? You know what I mean?
Exactly. And Julius Randle's got to be decent.
I think Julius Randle will be good. If he plays his role. He's not, in college, he was offensive because, he was bigger, stronger.
He wasn't even that offensive. Like, even Calipari didn't push him that much offensively. It was kind of the Harrisons and James Young.
They were star-studded, though.
They were. I mean, that was a loaded squad. I think he's got a really good personality for this team because I think he is going to be a guy that knows his role and set screens, and he's still
he rebounds and he plays tough.
He's
something they did not have last year.
He's an unreal rebounder. Like, you got him and Jordan Hill play together, they're getting all the rebounds.
I wish he was a little taller. Unfortunately,
I wish he was a baller.
I wish I was too, though.
Nice reference. Nice, thanks. Yeah, Wesley Johnson's gonna have to play big minutes because he's gonna have to guard all the best wing players. Wayne Ellington.
That's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I think Wayne Ellington's going to get minutes just because, like I said, he's one of the only decent defenders. And I think the best case scenario, I'm going to lay it out. Jeremy Lin reverts back to Linsanity, just puts up ridiculous assist and scoring numbers. Kobe is Jordan on the Wizards-y.
I'll take it.
Getting that jump shot up, putting up points. Wesley Johnson is decent. Xavier Henry stays healthy. Nick Young's that spark off the bench that'll either shoot you in and out of games.
Out more than in.
Probably. And then Randall kind of is a solid rookie starter because that's all you can really hope for. And then Jordan Hill and Ed Davis, the combination of those two can protect the rim enough and they win 30 games.
I'll take it.
That's the best case scenario. That's the best case scenario. We'll see how that goes. It could go much worse considering the injury history of the guys that I just listed. Speaking of injuries, a team that was crippled by a singular injury. One play changed the fate of an entire franchise, and that's the Indiana Pacers. One of the more interesting off seasons to talk about because they lost their best player for the season before the season even. The winds of the season weren't even blowing yet. They were practicing for the FIBA World Cup, and in a scrimmage, I believe he attempted to block Derrick Rose and just came up wrong. Vicious, brutal, just eye-cringing injury on national television nonetheless for a team that had championship aspirations. They brought in CJ Miles to kind of be their shooter off the bench, who now is going to have to start. They brought in Rodney Stuckey as kind of the spark off the bench, point guard, driving to the lane, repping Detroit, or at least formerly repping Detroit. And then you get all your usual cast of Pacer subjects: West, Hibbert, George Hill. They lost Lance Stevenson, and then they pretty much kept the core of last year with those two extra pieces. But with the East the way it is, with the uncertainty of the Cavaliers, with the Heat obviously falling into place, they could have been the team to finally make the jump and get to the finals. But without Paul George, they're a lottery team, in my opinion and a lot of people's opinions. We got to find out what Roy Hibbert is. Is he the guy that was the All-Star? Just unbelievable rim protector we saw not this past season but the season before, or is he the dude that was putting up 7 and 4 in the playoffs?
A lot of zeros.
A lot of zeros. George Hill's got to be more of a distributor, especially this year. He can't just be the dude that, takes three-pointers and occasionally drives to the basket when defenses get soft. He's going to have to get this offense sparked because they're going to need it. Rodney Stuckey, I think Zach Lowe from Grantland said he was going to be their leading scorer, and it's hard to disagree. Just because there's not going to be a lot of scoring. C.J. Miles had a really good year last year shooting threes, but he's really their only three-point shooter other than George Hill. So you're going to have, there's not a lot of floor spacing there. Stuckey is your only really attack the basket kind of guy. So defenses are going to just shrink on them, and there's not going to be a lot of, they're not going to be able to take advantage of them really. Their offense, their defense is still going to be good because all those guys are, good defensive players, and you still have Hibbert and, that very good coach, good home court advantage. They're in the Eastern Conference, but you got to score. You got to score in this league, and they just don't have the men to do it. This team could go anywhere from like the 8th seed to the worst team in the league real fast because if things don't start going well, they can start trading dudes. Hibbert's in kind of the last year of his deal. He's got a player option with a lot of people expecting him to decline it because he didn't take the max. So people expect him to take the max, and now with the new TV deal, the max could be even higher. So he's in the last year of his deal, so he's very tradable. People are going to want a rim protector. West is just a good veteran commodity that would be a welcome addition to any team. I always think the Raptors would be a good place for him. I don't know why. Nobody wants George Hill because he's on a bad deal and just has not lived up to expectations. But Miles and Stuckey are on reasonable deals. They could get them. So if things don't start going well, this team I think is just going to fall apart. Especially with Hibbert's sort of fragile mental status. League pass guy. Who? No one?
No.
Keep him off league pass is the recommendation.
The only thing I can say about them, they just gave Vogel an extension, did they not?
Yeah.
I have a sneaky suspicion that it has something to do with Stevenson leaving. I really think they just imploded last year. They had the talent, but when people just don't like each other, and I think Stevenson, as talented as he is, was the head of that. I just think that's what happened. I think they gave him that extension because they believe in him. So I think Roy Hibbert will get back to form. They're 4 and 5. I love Hibbert when he's Roy Hibbert, backed up by Mahimi.
Yeah.
I like the way that kid plays. And then Scola and David West are some of the better power forwards in the league from skills perspective. They're not going to wow you. You know what I mean? They're not.
For what they do, they're
exactly. They do what you expect of them. So I like that, but like you said, the offense, if George Hill can make more good decisions than he does bad, because sometimes it's pretty bad. He's got the talent, but just sometimes the court awareness isn't there.
Yeah.
I think, like you said, they can hover around that 8th spot, but ultimately probably just fall short of the playoffs.
Yeah, last year, Lance and Paul George were their top 2 ball handlers. Like, those guys handled the ball almost all the time. George Hill was kind of like, he brought the ball up court, would pass it to one of those guys, and then just kind of drift off and wait for an open three. He can't do that. Like I said, he's got to be more aggressive. He's going to have to be the leader of this offense, and I just don't think he can do that. I don't think that's a skill set. I think they used his skill set to, I think that 5 last year and the year before, where they had the most success, was where they ran Lance or Paul George, and they'd have him be the ball handler. George Hill, like I said, would drift off. Hibbert would kind of protect the paint there and get putbacks and rebounds. David West would be open for that mid-range shot, and they would just kind of play off each other. And it was that really good on-court chemistry, but like you said, that off-court chemistry might have screwed it up. So we'll see how that works. Without Paul George, though, I can't imagine how good they'll be. And it's just a bummer because he's one of the most exciting guys to watch and was consistently getting better year after year. Big loss for the league. Detroit Pistons is next. Very polarizing team last year. I had him as, I think, like the 6th seed in the East. That didn't go very well, and Rob said they'd be one of the worst teams in the league, I believe was the quote, and he was much more right than I was. So good on you, sir. they made a lot of changes, a lot of changes. Biggest of which was adding Stan Van Gundy, who is like the head of basketball operations, GM, head coach, leading merchandise salesman, hot dog vendor, mascot. He does everything for this team. I think he's their starting shooting guard. I mean, it's a lot of stuff on Van Gundy's plate. He wears a lot of hats in that organization. They added DJ Augustine. They paid him a bunch of money. Paid Jody Meeks a bunch of money. Karan Butler. And then they added a couple extra backup centers in Hasheem Thabit and Aaron Gray. I do not think they're going to be good. For the simple fact that, well, first of all, Josh Smith was horrendous last year. Like, one of the biggest dips in a career that I've ever seen. Just went from like a fringe all-star to just a joke. Like, every day there'd be some low light of Josh Smith coming out on the internet. Just bad threes and like, missing assignments on defense and just bad. Everything bad. I was hoping that they would let Greg Monroe go in the offseason. Not that I really care about the Pistons, but just for team chemistry-wise, I don't think Drummond and Monroe can play together. I think that was the big experiment last year, and it failed. For whatever reason, they brought him back. It's only for a 1-year qualifying deal. He was a restricted free agent. No one really made a play for him. I was pretty upset that the Heat didn't. And a lot of people were surprised that no one else did. He's a really good, talented, young center. Good post player, really good rebounder. Not a great defender, not a great rim protector, but he's still very young. And you're definitely not going to get any better at that when you have Andre Drummond, who is all of those things, or could be all of those things, playing next to you. I think they have to shade their minutes to where they're not playing together very much, to where a team kind of gets the first sense of that Twin Towers thing. I think I said this last year, but they just didn't do it. But now with a real head coach and not Maurice Cheeks, it's very possible that they could do this, where they kind of stagger their minutes to where Monroe and Drummond start together. Teams kind of feel how that Twin Towers thing works, kind of get thrown off by it, and then they start playing one at a time. Because Josh Smith needs to be a power forward. He needs to be near the basket. He needs to post up. He needs to be close to the rim because he can't shoot. He takes bad shots when he's away from the basket. And he just needs to do some dirty work. Like, he's not a really well talented guy. Like, he's a really good athlete. He can dunk out of the gym when he wants to, when he's in shape. But he's not really polished offensively. He just, he has some post moves, really good defender, good dunker, good in transition. But you can't just keep him on the perimeter. He's not a really good perimeter player. You want to keep him close to the basket, and with those two big guys, you're not going to get him there. But they're going to try it again for whatever reason. They signed Jody Meeks and DJ Augustine. They still have Brandon Jennings, and they have Kyle Singler to kind of spread the floor for those three. But there's just so much. There's no floor spacing at all between those three guys. They're all jammed up in that one little area. You can't have three effective guys all trying to work the paint. There's just not enough room. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was a really big disappointment last year for me. I thought he'd be better. Was not. Brandon Jennings was also horrendous. Those are their big two signings last year. I mean, I think this is a big year. Like, this is Greg Monroe's last year on his contract. This is Stan Van Gundy, who's a proven quality head coach in the NBA, at least we think, trying to put together what was a dysfunctional team. Can he succeed at that? Or is it just a case of, can't fix parts that don't fit together?
Well, he's definitely a good coach in my opinion. I find it really interesting. I'm not just saying this to agree with you, but 100% from a strategic standpoint, I agree with you. Josh Smith has to be at the 4. He just it'll improve his shot selection, and I think it's just better to have him closer to the basket. It'll just, steer him away from taking bad three-pointers. He thought he was a three-point shooter. He made a couple one year, and since then he just likes taking them.
Yeah.
He needs to be with his back to the basket.
When
he's
a
good
the Hawks,
athlete.
They kept it to a minimum for whatever reason.
Yeah. And it needs to be kept there again.
I don't get to a
give him a number that he can't take more than. I don't care. Yeah, he needs he needs to be closer to the basket to be more effective. He has a decent post game, like you said. He's a really
good shot blocker.
He is, and you're not going to block that many shots on the perimeter. It's not going to happen.
But he's also a good perimeter defender, so it's like he's a weird guy to fit in, but you definitely want him more in the paint than outside. Like you can have him defend the LeBron Jameses of the world, the Luol Dengs of the world. I'm trying to think of other good small forwards in the East, but there's really not that many. Paul Pierce. But then on offense, you got to just bump him back in there. And you're not going to have any space to do that if you're playing Monroe and Drummond.
Like you said, too, with Caldwell Pope, hopefully he I think we were both kind of high on him. Hopefully he gets it together and forms into what we thought he was going to be. Because honestly, just saying this, Jody Meeks has been the starting shooting guard on our team I rooted for. He's just not a starting shooting guard. He comes in, he can shoot threes in spurts, but he doesn't play enough defense. And especially on a bad team, you need to start somewhere defensively. That's where you win games. He's just not that guy.
I mean, I could see some scenario here. Like, going back to I said the best case scenario for the Lakers. Best case scenario for the Pistons is that Drummond takes that next step, turns into like young Dwight Howard, like a lot of people think, and they kind of move Monroe to the backup center, or they trade him, and then
he has some value. Oh, teams need that.
Especially, I think he's getting paid like 4.9 this year, which is very affordable, and you're essentially just renting him because it's a 1-year deal. So, and just surround Drummond, i.e. the Magic, with Dwight, with I guess Josh Smith. Smith, Butler, Meeks or Pope, and Jennings or Augustine. Like there's a lot of shooters out there, and that makes sense. So I could see a scenario where that could work out, but I still can't see them making the playoffs.
No, me neither.
League pass guy, Drummond.
I guess so. You like double doubles?
I
a lot
do.
Of rebounds.
And I like ridiculous dunks. Best center dunker in the league?
Yeah.
Okay. Denver Nuggets is next, who I nailed last year. I was one of the few people to not make the... I think we were both pretty much in the same wavelength with them, that they weren't going to make the playoffs. I really thought Brian Shaw did a bad job. Just with lineups and like how he used certain guys. Kenneth Faried, after 1 year with Brian Shaw, was like on the verge of being traded to the Knicks. Now he's got an extension, ironically enough. So the Nuggets front office clearly likes Faried, and they should. Just energy. He's definitely, spoiler, he's a league pass guy. They re-signed Timothy Mozgov. They traded for Aaron Aflalo, who I love. He's like one of my favorite players in the league. Great two-way player. He was like a fringe all-star last year. I thought he should have made it. They also drafted Gary Harris, who's like a lot of people compare to like a smaller Aaron Aflalo, who was great in Summer League. I think he won Summer League MVP. They get Nate Robinson back from injury. Hopefully they get Gallinari back from injury. It looks like he will be back. They signed Alonzo G, who won't really play. And they should be getting JaVale McGee back from injury at some point. Sooner rather than later, probably not at the start of the season, but they have some good front court depth. They have Mozgov, they have Darrell Arthur, Hickson, Faried. I think they're being an exciting team. There's a lot of guys on here I like watching. Seems to be a lot of trade pieces, but I just can't see a playoff team. Obviously, there's no superstar. Ty Lawson's the closest thing they have, and he probably would make the All-Star team if there weren't so many goddamn great point guards, especially in the West. He puts up great numbers. He's a speed freak. He gets to the basket. He's getting to be a better shooter. Really good at assists. He had a pretty bad assist-to-turnover ratio at the beginning of last year. It got better over time. He should be better this year, I would think, especially playing with a guy like Aflalo next to him, who's a good ball handler himself. And once again, I think it's a really exciting team, like a good league pass team, a guy to throw on like late at night. You're like, ooh, the Nuggets are playing the Wizards. Like, that's going to be exciting. Let's turn on that. You're going to see Faried dunk out of the gym. You're going to see Lawson. You're going to see Aflalo. Gallinari and Wilson Chandler are a pretty good three combo, but just not enough superstar caliber, especially in the shark pool that is the West. And I don't like their coach that much. So high points for the Nuggets, other than a lot of good trade pieces.
No, just pretty much for Reed. I think they're the perfect gatekeeper because when you play them, you're
they are the I'm trying to
There's
think
so
of
many.
a good MMA comparison. They're like the Kristoff Szynski of the NBA. No, he's retired, not as good. He's the Jim Miller of he's probably too good. He's the Joe Lozon of the NBA. Got it. Third time.
Perfect, nice. Especially in the West, when you honestly though, they will tell you something about yourselves when you play them because they don't have that one superstar, but they're a solid team.
Yeah,
like
their 1 through 5 is strong.
Exactly, they're going to tell you if you beat them, you probably deserve to be in the playoffs, and if you can't match up with them, well, you got some work to do. Clearly, they're a good team, but in that Western Conference,
they're like
just
not
enough.
They're a 500 team.
Yeah,
probably.
it's just not enough in the West.
No, and their backcourt's really probably one of the better backcourts in the league. I don't know. I think JaVale McGee has, for whatever reason, I keep thinking he's going to be good one year. And he's had moments. Like, remember when he locked down Bynum in that playoff game?
Unfortunately.
That was ridiculous. Like, I was like, oh my God, where is this guy? There's got to be some coach out there, not named Greg Popovich, that can pull this out of him.
I'm a fan of his post-dunk celebrations. He has some pretty good ones.
The cell phone one, he had another one that was good.
I'm a fan of his finger mustache and the faces he makes.
Yeah, the finger mustache, that's great. So, I'll be watching some Nuggets games. Kenneth Faried is the league pass guy, just energy, dunks, rebounds.
Hair.
Lots of hair.
Great hair.
Great hair. And he was probably the best guy not named Anthony Davis probably on the FIBA team. Him or...
He had a coming out party, definitely.
Yeah, he was great. New York Knicks are next. Speaking
Sorry,
of...
Trent.
Yeah, sorry. Shout out to Trin. Is he up? No, he's not. I was going to call him and see if he had any thoughts, but he's still in work. Maybe he's on his way. I'm going to try that. That'd be a great wrinkle on the podcast.
We're taking phone calls, everybody.
Yeah, we're taking calls. I'm not going to give out my number on the podcast, but he probably won't even answer because he's probably driving. But I'm going to edit all this out if he doesn't answer.
Please leave your message.
Nope.
I feel like you knew this was a setup.
It was a setup. Didn't work. Okay, the New York Knicks. They are at number 19, so we got a ways to go. Fuck. Okay,
We really need to go quicker.
Yeah, okay. They drafted Cole Anthony early, number 34. They traded Tyson Chandler for Jose Calderon, Sam Dallenberg, Shane Larkin. They added Quincy AC, Travis Outlaw, Jason Smith. Their new head coach, Derek Fisher. They're going to try to implement the triangle offense. Jose Calderon, I think, is a good addition because he's a good triangle fit. He's a very good passer, three-point shooter, fits to what they want to do. The big question mark to me is Carmelo and whoever plays the 4. I think, personally, Carmelo needs to play the 4. They need to start Amon Shumpert at the 3 and then J.R. Smith or Tim Hardaway at the 2. I think that's their best lineup. I think they need to keep it that way. Dallenberg at the 5 because he's the best defender. He's the only rim protector. And now Trin's calling us. Yes. Trin.
What up?
We're talking about the Knicks on the podcast. Do you have any thoughts?
It's on a podcast.
Hi, Trent.
Rob's here. We're talking about the Knicks, so we figured we'd call you to see if you had any thoughts.
I'm not liking the triangle offense. I'm thinking it's just going to Melo every time and play ISO.
If you didn't hear him,
He'll
he's
do his thing.
he's
Out
get,
the triangle and go from there.
thoughts on best lineup construction.
I like the line they had last time. It was Jose Calderon, J.R. Smith, Melo, Quincy AC, and Dallenberg.
Ooh, Quincy AC.
Yeah, nobody on it all. I like it.
What is that?
As little as Bargnani as possible.
Trent,
Bargnani was out of the game.
what's your prediction? Playoffs or no?
I'm predicting a 5 seed.
5 seed?
5 seed.
So who's not in the playoffs between the Hawks, Bobcats? The Hawks will not make it, and the Knicks will be a 5 seed. Okay. Controversial take from a Knicks fan.
Take it with a pound of salt, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, take it with multiple pounds of salt.
But don't worry, Trent. I picked the Lakers to win the championship, so don't worry about it.
I think they're both equally possible.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you later.
That's it.
There you go. I don't even know if you could hear that, but he said, to summarize, he likes Clay Anthony early to start, which is controversial, but I like it, off the beaten path. As little Andrea Bargnani as possible, a lot of mellow ISO, and they're going to be a 5 seed. So I feel like we can't get any better than that. I think eventually it's going to take a while for them to figure out that lineup, because I just don't know if Derek Fisher is cut out to be. He's going to be a good head coach at some point. It's just probably not going to be this year with this roster. And other than that, I think they're pretty deep. I think they're a pretty deep team. Prigioni is your number 2 point guard, is pretty solid. St. Larkin is pretty interesting. I love Tim Hardaway Jr. 30% because of his father being one of the greatest Heat players of all time. And then the rest of it just because he's exciting and will just shoot it, and he's really fun to watch. Best lineup for the Heat. I'm getting ahead of myself. The Knicks, they're league pass player, and we'll move on.
Can I just say bold prediction? I don't know how bold it is. I
here
have
you go.
them sneaking in at the 8th spot.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
Obviously I have them ranked 19, so that's out of the playoffs. They are the 9th seed in the East. I think they'll be fighting for the 8th spot. I just don't think they'll make it.
I have faith in the Fisher, more so Phil Jackson combination.
All right.
It's just, I think he can pull what's left out of Amare.
There's not much.
I know. I feel like Melo's game will be taken to a higher level. I mean, he's already superstar, obviously, but there's definitely decisions he can make that are
It's
better.
all about what surrounds him. The best years of Melo's career were when he was with prime Chauncey Billups, so he won a good point guard.
I like Calderon. I think it's an upgrade.
Yeah, okay. I think they have that. Some shooters, Aflalo, J.R. Smith. Who are some other guys? They had Al Harrington on those teams.
The answer in 1 year?
Yeah, there you go. And then you want some defensive guys around him. You want... Who was on those teams?
Linus Kleza? He's not walking through the door.
Nope. He is...
Kmart?
So, I was going to say, Kenyon Martin might actually still be on the team. Yeah, you want those defensive backcourt, front court guys. Dallenberg is pretty much the only one, and Jason Smith's okay.
Let's put it like this. If it was the West, I'd say no way, but it's the East, so I think they have a shot.
Yeah. I think they'll be fun to watch, irregardless. Number 18, my lucky number, I have the New Orleans Pelicans, who didn't do much in the offseason other than adding Omer Sheik, who actually I really like as a move. If anything else, because you can do a lot of stuff lineup wise with it. You're gonna start. He's definitely gonna be their starting center. That means Anthony Davis is your power forward, which gives him more room to roam. If you want, I don't know. He has hit some threes in the past. If he's been working on that, maybe he goes out and drifts a little bit. His mid-range game has gotten way better. And he could also drift on shot block attempts and defense and do some cool things there. You could also have Ryan Anderson there, so you could play small ball with Davis at the center, Ryan Anderson at the 4. And Omer Sheik just gives Anthony Davis's body a break. If you're playing against a Dwight or a Tim Duncan, Marc Gasol, Aldridge, you have a Sheik guard him, and then Anthony Davis does whatever else. He can rest on defense. Let's say they are playing the Trailblazers, he can rest and he can play Robin Lopez, who's not going to do anything offensively other than grab some rebounds. Their their backcourt is where I have some issues. Holiday, Gordon, Tyreek Evans, they're all very ball dominant. Holiday's definitely the best distributor. Gordon's the best shooter, and Evans is the best basket attacker. But you're going to have to mix and match depending on matchups. And after those guys, all of which are pretty injury prone, there's not a lot of depth there. John Salmons is probably the best guy. They added him in the offseason after he got bought out by Toronto. Got Jimmer Fredette and Russ Smith, both very undersized, very poor defensive point guard, shooting guard combos. Austin Rivers, who has not developed into anything. Darius Miller, who played okay for them, but I think he's more of like a 3 stretch 4 type. And then a lot of it depends on Ryan Anderson. Last year, I don't want to say I predicted it because it's rough to predict when somebody's going to have a bad year. But I just think coming off the year he had with a lot of personal issues and some injuries, I just couldn't see him being that effective, and he wasn't. So, league pass guy, obviously Anthony Davis. You, sir, have them as a playoff team.
I do. And that may just be some wishful thinking, honestly. But I have them sneaking in. Let me see. I have them as the 8th spot, actually. And I just think that Anthony Davis is already on the rise, obviously, but I think it's the year where you go, wow, that dude's one of the best at his position, you know?
I think he's already one of the best at his position. I think he's probably a year away from being like a top 5
Yeah, exactly.
I think a lot of people already think of him as that. Like in NBA GMs, I think, behind LeBron and Durant, he's probably the most untradeable guy.
He's going to be, he's right there. You're going to start throwing him when you're talking about best players in the league, it's going to be LeBron, Durant, and then his name's going to be right there. You know, a lot of people are high on certain players, but he's right there. And I think for good reason, like you said earlier when we were talking about one of the other teams, his play in this FIBA tournament over the summer showed exactly what he can do when he's the man on the team. And they have decent enough talent around him, I think, to get into the playoffs, even though it's much harder in the West.
Could a player be more bred for success than Anthony Davis? Starting out in Kentucky with Cal, with an amazing team. They won the title, mostly because of him, but he had some really good talent around him, all of which I believe are still in the NBA. Goes from that immediately to the Olympics with LeBron, Kobe, Chris Paul, Durant, Melo, then to the Pelicans, who are, I believe, then the Hornets, who weren't that good, but still, got his feet wet, got injured. Then went from there to his second season, first All-Star season, played really, really well, and then right into the FIBA World Cup. I mean, dude's just been bred for success. And I said that he was going to be Marcus Camby. So, dumb. Let's move on. Phoenix Suns at number 17, one of the big surprise teams of last year. A lot of people had them as a lottery team. They were fighting, and they had that playoff spot locked up for the longest time. They somehow got better in the offseason, but they're not going to surprise anybody this year. But they added Isaiah Thomas for a kind of a 3-point guard combo. Interesting play there. How he was new last year. How Hornacek is going to use those 3. They added Goran Dragic's brother Zoran Dragic. That's not going to confuse anyone. They drafted T.J. Warren, who's a scoring machine. Got his team, I believe it was Virginia. No, North Carolina State. Don't know where I pulled that from.
I've heard it both ways.
Yeah, I've heard it both ways. Pulled them and brought them pretty deep into the tournament on his back, just a scoring machine. He's going to play backup 3 behind P.J. Tucker, who they re-signed. They got both Morris brothers. They lost Channing Frye, who was a big part of their season last year. It was kind of their stretch 4, stretch 5. Let him do a lot of interesting things on offense. And kind of replaced him half-heartedly with Anthony Tolliver, who can do some of the same things. And then they got Miles Plumlee, and hopefully their first-round pick from last year, Alex Len, will be able to at least contribute a little bit. I don't have them as a playoff team. I have them right outside. But in terms of most exciting teams in the league, I think they're right up there. Probably number 1 or 2 on League Pass, just in terms of exciting teams. Dragic and Bledsoe was a really exciting backcourt when they played together, but because of their injuries, they didn't do much together. I love Bledsoe. He's one of my favorite guys to watch, and I still think his ceiling is so high. They re-signed him, gave him a lot of money. It took a while, but they finally did it. Just a lot of running, a lot of gunning, and a lot of transition buckets for the Phoenix Suns. A lot of high-scoring affairs. Could you pick one league pass guy from this team, and what's their ceiling?
The ceiling is if they play, not perfect, but if they play a near perfect year, I think they could get in. That ceiling would be sneaking into that 8th spot.
Really, that's their ceiling. I'd say their ceiling is like 6th seed.
I don't know.
When they were good last year, they were really good. Problem is,
I just don't know if they can duplicate it. You know what I mean?
It's going to be hard
because it's unproven. Not saying the talent isn't there, because it obviously still is. The only person they really lost was Fry, like you said. Just I have to see him prove it first.
They had a lot of guys that had the best years of their career. Gerald Green, Dragic, Channing Frye probably had the best year of his career. Plumlee came out of nowhere. He was like a throw-in in a trade that the Pacers just gave him away for nothing. He ended up being a really good starting center. I think T.J. Warren's going to add an element to them. I think he's going to come off the bench and kind of be a spark. I don't think he's going to score that much, but I think he could like shoot his way into the rotation. Him and Gerald Green are pretty similar, but I think they both can. If one's cold, one's hot. That's going to add a lot. All right, we're moving along because we don't have that much time. We have still a lot of teams. We have the whole playoffs to get to.
Why do we waste all the time on the bad teams?
I don't know. I feel like it should be the reverse.
We need to start at 1 next time.
And go down?
Yeah.
That's not exciting. You want to build a number 30. Whatever. Maybe you're right.
For pure time.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Number 16, I have the AC in the East, the Atlanta Hawks. Had a rough season last year with injuries. Still made it to the playoffs. We're sub 500 in the East, but the East is so bad they made the playoffs. And they almost made it to the second round. They went to Game 7 with the Pacers. Really well coached by Mike Budenholzer, who's a Popovich guy. Played pretty much that Spurs style. A lot of ball movement, a lot of threes. They have a lot of personnel to match that with Kyle Korver. They added Thabo Cephalosha and Kent Bazemore, 2 guys that can play D and shoot threes, as I will now call them the 3 and D guys. They have some really good bigs in Millsap and Horford. Pero Antic had a really good year. Stretch 5, kind of muscly, like Nikola Pekovic meets Channing Frye type of guy. Really enjoyed watching him. They drafted Adrian Payne from Michigan State, who's another kind of stretch 4. DeMar Carroll is back. He had a really good season last year. He'll probably be splitting the small forward duties with Cephalosha and Korver. Deep backcourt. I always do that. Backcourt with Jeff Teague, Shelvin Mack, and Dennis Schroeder, who didn't play much last year, but he's still young. I think he'll develop. I like this team a lot, even though they're the A seed. I think they were exciting last year because of the style they play, very Spursy. And I think they only improve that. And, God, can Al Horford please play a full season?
I think we talked about it last year. Like, they're just one of those teams that...
Yeah, they're like a perennial AC.
Yeah, exactly. And that's pretty much where I have them, either the 8 or the 7. I think they'll be the 7 because I think the Knicks would be that AC, like I said. I stick to that. But I think they'll make the playoffs. It's just that style of ball. Like you said, they're just, like you said, the perennial 8 seed. They're just going to be there. And they win enough games to get in. I think same thing will happen this year.
Yeah. I mean, the mainstream, like, they're not going to be on national TV a lot. They don't have any, like, super duper stars. Millsap and Horford are the biggest stars, and they're both very good. Al Horford remains one of the most underrated guys in the league. He just needs to stay healthy. We'll see what happens. Paul Millsap is also on an expiring deal, so if this season does go in the tank, I think he could be a guy that gets moved to a contender or or just a salary dump. We're moving on. 7th seed in the East, in my humble opinion. These are my rankings, by the way. Rob's just commenting on them. He has his own. They have the 7th seed in the East. They are the Brooklyn Nets, who they lost Paul Pierce in the offseason. Didn't do a whole lot because they are still very cap-strapped. They did add a new head coach in Lionel Hollins after Jason Kidd booked it for Milwaukee. First time anyone's ever left New York for Milwaukee, ever. They brought back KG. He's still around, despite just a horrendous end of last year and playoffs. They bring him along with Brook Lopez, who returns from injury. A lot of people excited about his return, including myself. Another old school back to the basket offensive center. Darren Williams, who just looked done last year. He had some moments, as he does, but I forget who it was. I want to say it was Russillo on Ryan, SVP and Russillo on ESPN. Compared him to what happened to Baron Davis in terms of just the superstar, exciting player, debate for one of the best point guards in the league, and then just fell off a cliff.
That's a hell of a comparison, actually.
It really looks true. We were talking about Darren Williams versus Chris Paul, seems like yesterday, and now it's just he's not even probably in the top 20.
I was one of those guys that put him number one for a while.
When he was on the Jazz, he had a great team around him for sure, and he was younger and had less injuries, but it's taken its toll on him, and getting paid the big money has certainly not helped. He's very complacent where he is right now. Joe Johnson had a great year last year. I don't know why. I really enjoy watching Joe Johnson. He does nothing flashy. He's pretty inconsistent, but when he's on, he is a treat to watch. And go back and watch some of his game winners from last year. Just clutch. Closer. He's the closer for this team, no doubt. They drafted Bojan Bogdanovic from Serbia, who actually played really good really well in the FIBA World Cup. And apparently he's going to start for them at the 3. They got some depth there with Kirilenko and Allen Anderson. So, and Mirza Teletovic can also slide over there. Joe Johnson can slide over there. So they have options. But it looks like he's going to start. I think he's got real potential. As a defender, he's a smart player. He can shoot threes. I think he's going to fit what they want to do, which is play some pick and roll and shoot some threes. And I'm curious to see how Hollins injects his kind of defensive mindset. Because you look at the starting 5, you definitely don't think defense.
Not at all. Quick question. Is it any coincidence that with that billionaire Russian owner that half their players sound like they are in the Russian mob? Just going over this roster?
No, it doesn't. You got Bojan Bogdanovic, Andrei Kirilenko, Sergei Karasayev, and Mirza Teletovic.
Everyone fighting for the small forward position is a Russian mobster.
or fighting an M1 promotion.
Jeez.
On a Fedor undercard.
Fedor definitely has season tickets. But,
there's so many, non-MMA fans that will miss so many references in this podcast.
Like you said, I have my rankings, which I don't do any research. That's probably why. So I have them actually as the team that fell out of the playoffs. I have them as a 9 because I put the Knicks in. And I don't know. I just think Garnett really doesn't have anything left. Not that he doesn't have anything left, but it can't sustain 82 games. You're going to need him more. I do like Plumlee. Lopez coming back is a big thing, which I didn't take into account because, like I said, I don't research things. But besides that, I just don't see it. For some reason, I got a feeling that the Knicks are going to take their spot this year.
Lionel
Hollins is a good coach, too.
Having personnel that doesn't fit your scheme is always an interesting thing because it's what's going to budge? In theory, you should make your scheme fit the players. But I feel like Lionel Hollins is one of those stubborn guys that he's just going to, he's going to get the most out of them defensively, but there's just not a lot of defensive talent. Kirilenko is your best defender for sure. Garnett's there, but, in his old age, him and Kirilenko have seen better days for sure. But, if this was 2007,
that'd be a lot.
This would be one of the defensive juggernauts. That's even with Brook Lopez and his 5 rebounds a game. Plumlee's going to be their kind of spark off the bench, I think. He's so athletic, which is crazy because he's a white guy. I'm just kidding. He was. I agree. He was also really good in the FIBA tournament. Ongoing theme here. So, if there was a league pass guy, I'd probably go Plumlee because he's probably the most exciting. But I really enjoyed Joe Johnson, so he'd be my pick. But I have the Nets channel anyway, so I don't need to watch them on league pass. No big deal. Anyway, not a lot of exciting stuff going on there. So let's keep it rolling. To the West. The 14th team and the 8th seed in the West is H-Town, the Houston Rockets, who this might be controversial, I guess, because they were a pretty high seed last year. They kind of went for it last year with Dwight Howard coming to town, pairing him with James Harden and Chandler Parsons and Jeremy Lin and all those guys, and that's quickly disappeared as Chandler Parsons went over to Dallas, just south from Houston.
I don't know.
Yeah, not looking at some real high geography
It's close
grades here. It's definitely
Same
in the
state.
same state. Okay. So you still got Dwight. Obviously, you still have Harden. And then after that, they brought in Trevor Ariza to replace Chandler Parsons. Defensively, it's probably a slight upgrade. Offensively, Ariza... Was there a guy that took advantage more of a contract year in more recent memory than Trevor Ariza?
Never.
He went off last year and had a great year. And he got paid because of it. And he's not going to live up to that. And Rockets fans are probably going to hate him very soon. Francisco Garcia very well could move into his starting position. I like their point guards. I like Beverly, one of the best defensive point guards in the league. Will just jump in your shorts. Isaiah Cannon didn't get a lot of playtime last year, but I think he's good. I think he's talented. You can shoot threes, and that's pretty much all you need to do on this team. Dump it to Dwight or shoot threes, and they got the team to do it. Shout out to Joey Dorsey, making his NBA comeback. As Jalen Rose would say, keep getting them checks. He's been out of the league for like 3-4 years. And he's coming back.
Didn't he play Derrick Rose on that Memphis team? Like, isn't that long ago?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. That's way back. They got the corpse of Jason Terry for bench celebrations. Maybe you'll get a tattoo of maybe you'll get a tattoo of the Larry O'Brien trophy again. I cannot believe the Heat lost that series. All right, league pass guy, Harden, I guess.
It's gotta be.
And he's one of the few guys that on any given night can score 60. Like, there's not a lot of dudes like that. Melo, Durant. Probably not even
Kind of
Kobe
reminds me
anymore.
of Gilbert Arenas.
Very
back in the day.
Arenas-y. Very Arenas-y. I still enjoy watching him, even though his flops and traveling have just gotten out of control. His defense is miserable, as always. I just don't think this team has not improved at all, and all the other Western teams have. So they're going to take a fall. Everyone else is going to go up. It's pretty much that easy. I feel like they're a very easy regression team, and if you're going to pick a team to fall out,
Which I did.
they're the pick, and that's what Rob did. Especially because they had a pretty good year with injuries. Like, I don't remember any big injuries for them. Like, Dwight was healthy for the most part. They had that weird Ashik Dwight thing that they tried out for a long time that didn't work. He wasn't really healthy, but they didn't even need him because he was so checked out. I was shocked they didn't trade him last year. Parsons and Harden were healthy. Beverly's always banged up, but they got a lot of production out of Lin. He's gone. Terrence Jones was very good last year. He kind of broke out as their starting power forward. He's going to be there again. There's some depth there to challenge him, but he's still going to keep the job. And if anyone was going to make the leap, it'd be him in Parsons' absence. He had some big games. I had him on my fantasy team last year, and he had some like 30 and 12 games. So we'll see if they can get him going. The Charlotte Hornets are my next pick, number 13. I actually called them the Hornets, not the Bobcats, so credit to me. They ended up getting Detroit's draft pick because of a terrible trade for Ben Gordon, like, very long ago. It was, I believe, Corey Maggette for Ben Gordon, which is affecting the 2014 draft.
Corey Maggette? Did you say that?
Yeah. That trade got...
NBA Live 2005?
Yeah.
Well, that's the last time I heard that name.
That trade got Noah Vonleh for the Charlotte Hornets, which is crazy. Noah Vonleh was projected to go like in the top 5, dropped all the way down to number 9. They also drafted P.J. Harrison, who's a good offensive player. But Noah Vonleh, in theory, should probably start for this team. He's a bit banged up, but I think at their best, he'll be the starting power forward because you're going to need a defensive-minded guy next to Al Jefferson, who's really not that good of a rim protector, of a rebound. He's a pretty good rebounder, but not a great defensive center. So Vonleh does some shot blocking. He's a good rebounder, good rim protector. I think they're going to want to use him in that capacity. Although right now he's being blocked by a pick from the year before, Cody Zeller, who, as I predicted, was a bust. Marvin Williams they signed also along with Lance Stevenson. That was their big offseason. They also signed Brian Roberts, who actually had a really good year for the Pelicans.
He's playing second base.
That's
Sorry.
Is that also Brian Roberts? It's a very common name, I would imagine. There's probably many Brian Roberts. This was the one that played for the Pelicans last year. Had a really good year playing for Drew Holiday when he got hurt. And good three-point shooter. I think he's going to be a good backup point guard. The big deal is Lance coming over. They did not get a lot of offense, being the Hornets, that is, and bringing over a guy in Lance Stevenson and get his own shot that is going to be well coached and a defense-minded scheme with a lot of veterans on this team. I think he's going to do well. There's some skepticism about him being a potential locker room cancer and a loose cannon. I believe you have some of those reservations, let's call them. But I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to fit in well. I think there's some leadership with Jefferson and Walker, MKG, Marvin Williams, and Zeller. Like, there's a good core. Like, this is not the Bobcats team that won like 15 games a couple years ago. It's, other than like Kemba Walker, it's a totally different team. Gerald Henderson, I guess. He's going to be there along with MKG to play the small forward. And this team is deep now. You got Brian Roberts, Gary Neal, PJ Hairston, either Henderson or MKG, Zeller, Vonleh, Marvin Williams, whoever they play that, Bismack Biyombo and Jason Maxiell. Like, those guys aren't all great players, but as 8th men, 9th men, 7th men, like, that's a pretty good bench. And their coach did a really good job last year. Steve Clifford did a really good job at creating a winning mentality there. They went into Al Jefferson in the post. They were led by guys like Kemba Walker and MKG to a winning record, to a valiant effort in the playoffs against the Heat. And they were never going to win that series, but they played well for the most part. And they're only going to get better now with some of these additions. Anything on the Hornets? Lance, how you feeling?
Well, he's the one guy in the NBA that no matter what, I think, he never checks out. He's going to compete from whistle to whistle, Yeah. Sometimes, even through the whistle, ask LeBron's ear.
Oh,
but God. I mean, they made the playoffs last year, so I can only, I think they're going to get, I think he definitely gets them better. He adds them. Like you said, they're really deep. Good draft picks, so I think they're going to just improve from last year.
And I could see a scenario where they're even better than I project them to be. Like, Al Jefferson, he had a ridiculous year last year, but even if he kind of regresses to the mean for him, just the offense potential with Walker, Lance, Gerald Henderson, Marvin Williams, those are all guys that can shoot threes and space the floor. Then you have Al in the middle. Makes a lot of offensive sense. Lance is just an attacker. He can play pick and roll. When Zeller's on the floor, he's going to be the kind of leader of the second team, I would imagine, as he was in Indiana. And he can do a lot of things offensively, and he's just going to give him that extra spark. And he's a very underrated defensive player. So Steve Clifford's going to get the most of it out of him on that end of the floor also, especially considering that Kemba's not great in that department, and he can guard probably the best guard on the team. Him and MKG are going to make a good defensive tandem when they do go against two good wing players. So, I have them at the 6th seed in the East. A lot of Eastern teams.
I have them same exact spot.
All right, so there you go. A team that made the jump last year from lottery team to playoff team, which I predicted also. Didn't predict them to do as well as they did, but it was hard to, is the Portland Trailblazers. And I went back and listened, and you were singing the praises of one Damian Lillard and said he could be a guy that could make the jump. I don't know if he made the jump, but he made a jump last year for sure. And put the team on his back, along with LaMarcus Aldridge. Both had just phenomenal years. The whole team played really, really well. Wesley Matthews was a beast defensively. Him and Batum were hitting every three, it seemed like. They didn't get anything from their bench again, which they tried to improve the year before. They've tried again. They've paid decent money to Chris Kaman and Steve Blake, who makes his Trailblazers return. They got C.J. McCollum, who didn't really play a whole lot last year. They got him in the draft the year before. Didn't get a little lot out of him. Hopefully they can get more this year. Same with Alan Crabb. They didn't get much from Darrell Wright. Hopefully he can bounce back. Thomas Robinson was a pretty decent spark off the bench. He kind of played backup center or backup power forward. So it's a deeper team. It's a team that I think is going to not be as good as they were last year, just because I can't see Lillard and Aldridge having those kind of years again, because they were just so good. But with the I think Batum has potential to be better. I think the bench and the depth have a potential to be better. And they're just an exciting, dynamic team in the West, and I'm looking forward to watching them. So, League Pass guy, Aldridge, Lillard, Batum.
For me, it's Batum. I'm a fan of his.
I
like him a lot.
He's one of the most well-rounded guys in the league. His defense dipped a little bit last year also. So, with that getting back to where it was, I think it could be an improvement. Although he did play for France, so he doesn't have a whole lot of rest in him, unfortunately. They were a team, they made it to the second round last year, got bounced by the Spurs. There was the big moment in the first round. I feel like they just had an emotional letdown. They had the game winner in Portland by Lillard against the Rockets to go into the second round, and then they just got beat up by the eventual champions, to be fair. But they didn't really perform. They got blown out in almost every game in that series. Are they a team that can make the second round this year, depending on the matchup?
Depending on the matchup.
Is that all that depends on, is the matchup?
I think so. I have them... Looking at my standings, I'm going to switch it a little bit. I think I put them higher than I should have. I'm going to put them at the 5, so they wouldn't actually have home court. But, I don't know what happened. I picked that series to go 7 last year. We were talking about the Blazers and the Spurs. I thought they were going to give them run for their money. I thought they could actually even beat the Spurs with the upset. But this year, I don't know. I think I'm going to stick with the 5. I think they can make the second round, but like you said, it all depends on the matchup.
Yeah, the West is just so matchup heavy. Like, you just don't know who's going to get matched up with who's going to have home court, who gets hot. It's just a debacle, really. I mean, in a good way. Is that your car?
No.
Oh, okay. There's a really loud car alarm for those that aren't hearing that, and you've just been alerted to it for no reason, if not. We're moving on. A team that I'm very excited about is the Washington Wizards. They added Paul Pierce out of nowhere. Like, this came out of left field. I didn't hear any rumblings about, like, Pierce, looking at them or considering them. It was just like Ariza left one day, next day they're getting Paul Pierce. Not bad. He's obviously not where he used to be, but he's still a guy that can contribute on this team. A lot depends on guys stepping up. Otto Porter, who was their first-round pick last year, gave them absolutely nothing. He barely played and was just not NBA ready. He's got a year in the NBA, feeling the speed of the game, the defense of the game, size of the game. Can he give them something? Because he's going to have to. With Paul Pierce, he's not going to play a lot of minutes. He's probably going to play 25 to 27 minutes a game. Otto Porter's their backup small forward. They got to get something out of him. Martell Webster's banged up. Glenn Rice Jr.'s banged up. Beal is hurt for the first 6 to 10 weeks with a wrist problem. They're going to have to get something out of Porter, because that hole is filled up, that wing player spot. They have Rasul Butler there, who played decent for the Pacers last year, but he's not Beal, Webster, or Paul Pierce for sure. They added a few guys in the front court with Drew Gooden, who they had for a short time last year on a short-term contract after a few injuries. They signed him to a big deal, or big for him. DeJuan Blair, they signed over. They re-signed Marcin Gortat, which was a big thing. Gave him a lot of money, so he's locked up for a while. Chris Humphreys they got for some depth, and they re-signed Andre Miller. So their bench is established. Once they get healthy, at the beginning of the year, it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be a lot of John Wall, and it's going to be a lot of Marcin Gortat, a lot of pick and rolls between those two, and they're going to have to carry them. That's why I have them a little bit lower than some people, because that first month or two of the season, I think, could go pretty poorly. Hopefully they don't check out after that, because I do really enjoy watching this team, especially John Wall and Bradley Beal. Great backcourt. Really enjoy watching them together. Wall's the penetrator. He's, the attacker. His 3-point percentage went up last year. And Beal's just, he's all over the place. He's attacking the basket. He's defending. He's shooting threes. His 3-point shot is gorgeous to watch. And he's really picking up the game. I think he's going to be one of the best players in the league very shortly. He's just got to stay healthy. And I think John Wall's right there also. So, a lot of veterans, a lot of injury concerns. Thoughts on the Wiz, and they brought back Randy Whitman, so there's that.
Well, John Wall made a believer out of me. I was never really high on him. I thought he was just someone who needed the ball in his hands and just gonna do his thing. A little bit selfish for a point guard, but I don't know. Maybe just him playing with Beal, something clicked.
He was also stuck on some bad teams.
That's true.
Andre Blatchful, Gilbert Arenas. Who else? Who else was on those teams? JaVale.
Yeah, exactly.
Swaggy.
Could have been that. I gotta agree with you. I have him a little bit lower than some people too, like you said, because of that Beal injury. Otherwise, I did have him ranked top 4 getting home court originally, but that Bradley Beal injury changes things. I think they're, just in his absence, they're going to lose more games than they would have normally without him. So I think they're going to fall probably to like the 5, and which makes room for a certain Miami Heat team that we're going to talk about.
Nice transition. They have a big ceiling floor. Like they could be anywhere from like the 8 seed to 3 seed, in my opinion. Depending on how everything goes, how the chemistry works out, if people stay healthy. Nene's always hurt. I think he's suspended actually. Nene, DeJuan Blair, Daniel Warren, Xavier Silo. Okay, so the only guys you care about are Nene and DeJuan Blair. They're suspended a game, and it's not a huge deal, but Drew Gooden's a little banged up. Gortat's there. Chris Humphreys. You got Kevin Seraphin. So those guys are going to have to contribute. I really don't like Randy Whitman. I was really shocked they brought him back because for the talent that they had last year. And the year they got out of Wall, Beal, Gortat, Nene, and Ariza, the starting 5, their talent should have gotten them way farther than the seed they had. I believe they were the 7 seed or 6 seed, maybe the 5. But even still, you look at the talent and how bad the East was. They lost a lot of games they shouldn't have lost, especially in the division they have. With
last year,
with the Magic.
After the 2 was open, they could have very well been the 3 last year.
They had
honestly.
the talent to do it and couldn't pull it off. And I think you got to point the finger at Randy Whitman. I think, yeah, exactly. I think Lionel Hollins would have been perfect for this team. I almost wish he would have went there because you have the 2 bigs like he did in Memphis. You have a point guard, relatively similar to what Conley brings to the table, like he had, and he had so much success with those teams. Like I would have really enjoyed to see that fit. I think would have been better. So we are at number 10, none other than the Miami Heat, repping hard. It's a tough one. First year in a long while without the King. LeBron James has moved on, and we're moving on without him. We've drafted UConn's own Shabazz Napier, the tournament champion. We added Luol Deng to fill the hole, along with Danny Granger, the shell of the once great Danny Granger. And Josh McBob brought along. He thought he was playing on a team with LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. And was brought back down to reality and hasn't shown up since. So hopefully we'll get him in good spirits because he was very good last year. And it's going to need to be pretty good for us this year because we don't have a whole lot of front court depth. The guy I want to talk about is James Ennis, who was our second-round pick a year ago. And he went over to Australia, played some international ball, really looked good and has looked very good in Summer League and preseason since then. So I expect him to play minutes. Lil Deng gets hurt a lot. Dwayne Wade's going to have to sit out a lot of games. Danny Granger's old. So they're going to have to rely on James Ennis, and he's going to have to bring some stuff to the table in order for our wings to be held down. Our point guard spot looks oddly similar to what it was a year ago because it is the exact same. Mario Chalmers and Norris Cole are back. Norris Cole is going to be here regardless. He has 1 year left on his rookie deal. We'll probably say goodbye to him in his flat top after this year. But you still got Chalmers, and maybe Chalmers will be like really, really good without LeBron yelling at him every other possession. I doubt it. He was horrible last year and needs to be better because we do not have a lot of three-point shooting. He's going to have to come in big with that. So how I see this team looking, weird, I'm talking about the Heat a long time. Who had the over-under on that? It's going to be a lot of Bosch pick and rolls, I'm thinking. They're just going to have to feed Bosch the ball, and he's decent posting up. Like they can have, some 5 or 6 Bosch post-ups per game, but you're not going to want to just keep going to it. You're going to have to pick and roll him. You're going to have to get him moving in space, involved. Otherwise, he's going to check out. And you need to keep him focused and engaged. Otherwise, the offense is going to go to shit. Because Dwayne Wade is obviously not what he used to be, as sad as it is to say. I would love to see a prime Dwayne Wade on this team because I think it would be pretty damn good. He can hit the jump shots. He's going to hit a lot of fadeaways, a lot of post-up jump shots. He's going to do a lot of passing because there's a big hole left with LeBron leaving, and he's going to have to make up for the assist lost with LeBron leaving because Chalmers and Cole are not big assist guys. So I think there's going to be a lot of Dwayne Wade post-ups, dishing to a cutting Bosch or a cutting Deng or a cutting McRoberts, and some three-point shooting from Ennis or Granger or Chalmers or Cole or Shabazz if he gets playing time, which I doubt. I'm not very confident in this team. I have them as the 4 seed. I think they could be anywhere from 6 to 3, depending on how the season goes, injuries and chemistry. But I have trust in Eric Spoelstra that he can make this team work. If they get to the second round of the playoffs, it's a victory in my book. I would love to see them play the Cavs, although we would lose. It'd just be cool to see. And I have them as the 4 seed, as I said, and probably like 45 wins at the most.
I got
unbiased opinion. Go.
I have them locked in at the 4 right now. I mean, you can't duplicate last year. Obviously, you don't just lose LeBron and then be the number 1 seed, especially when he's still in your conference. But you talked about Chris Bosh. He's gotten better every year. I'm not really a huge fan of the guy. He's so easy to make fun of, but on the court,
he really is.
He's just gotten better and better, and he just shoots threes now, and he makes them.
He does. He's automatic.
Yeah, it's really weird. Josh McRoberts, I'm not really high on, but I mean, he's formidable.
Former Laker.
Yeah,
he was really good last year.
That's why I'm not really high on him. But
he was really, really good last year. Like I don't know if it was the system or the coaching or what, but he was a really good passer. He played some defense. He he put up not awesome numbers, but decent. Especially for the kind of player that he is. He was pretty much like the 5th option on that starting 5 of the Hornets / Bobcats last year. I'm gonna look at his numbers, but they probably don't tell the whole story as they usually do. He put up 8, 4. And those are assists. 8, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. That's a lot for a big dude. Not bad. So if he can put up that on the Heat, I'll be thrilled. The problem is that, like I said with Bosh, he's gonna have to be involved a lot in the offense. I'm wondering about the defense. Like, there's not a whole lot of rim protection unless Yeah, okay. Birdman is back. He was really bad last year. He had some moments, as he always does, and, he's going to be the spark off the bench, but he can't play more than 20 minutes, if that. Haslam's back. Sean Williams right now is listed as our number 2 power forward. That's going to be bad. I would, honestly, let's bring back Jermaine O'Neal.
Wow.
He's a free agent. He played pretty well the last 2 years. We're going to need some big guys. Bring him back. Former Heedle. Bring him back. All right, anyway. Heat rant over. League pass guy. I don't know. Bosch, I guess.
Well, reports are that Dwayne Wade is, healthy on a new diet.
He is on the paleo diet.
So, I don't know if they could manage his minutes. I mean, he's a highlight waiting to happen. I got to go D Wade.
All right.
Or my boy Birdman.
I would love to see some Flash in the Flash. But I'm skeptical. It's going to hurt. Honestly, it's going to hurt. Seeing the Cavs win like 80 games. Just destroy the Heat. We're going to get one.
Hopefully it's, Christmas?
I would love for it to be Christmas and us win by 30. Because I bet there's a lot of guys that...
You're not salty, are you? By any chance?
I still like LeBron. Like, if the Heat aren't going to win, which they're not, in terms of the title, I want it to be him. Because he gave us 2 titles and he gave us the best years of his career. I wish he was still on the team. I'm bummed that he isn't, but I can't blame him. Look at the team he went to. We'll talk about that later. Dallas Mavericks. I think they're going to be really good. I have them as the 6th seed in the West. I think they could be higher. They also could be lower. They added Chandler Parsons. That was their big signing. They added Al Farouk Aminu, who I think had a really good year for the Pelicans last year as kind of a 3-4 hybrid. He's going to come off the bench and do some defensive stuff. Jameer Nelson they got off the streets. He might be the starter, or Devin Harris, one of those two. But the two of them together is pretty nice little point guard rotation. They got Raymond Felton there in the Tyson Chandler trade, unfortunately for them. They also picked up Richard Jefferson. It's just some depth, a veteran, guy to have when you're trying to, save some wear and tear on some of these guys. And they re-signed Devin Harris, like I said. Dirk is back, and he's surrounded with probably the best team he's had. I would say definitely the best team he's had since the title team. Tyson Chandler being the key there. He had an off year last year, but he was injured a lot and playing on a bad team, poorly coached team. He's back with Rick Carlisle on a really good situation.
It's hard to look good when no one else on your team plays defense too.
It's true. I mean, if you look at the starting 5, he might be in a similar scenario. Dirk, Parsons, Monte, and Jameer. Especially Monte. Although he was awesome last year. Like, I make fun of him a lot for his shot selection and defense, but he was really, really good. Like, him and Dirk playing pick and roll. Wow. Him and Dirk playing pick and roll was unstoppable. Teams could not figure that out. There was a Charlie Villanueva sighting on the depth chart. I will bet you $1 he will be cut before the season. He's not making final cuts. Brandon Wright is a big key to this team because he played big minutes last year in relief of Dalembert. I think he played more minutes than Dalembert, and he usually played crunch time. He's just a ridiculous rim protector, pick and roll guy, good defensive stopper. So when Tyson isn't having a great game, you could always bring Brandon Wright in. He's only good for like 25 minutes a game, but those 25 minutes, he's one of the most efficient guys in the league. Like if you look at PER, he's one of the highest guys every time because when he comes in, he's super efficient and he really helps the team. So I think they're going to be really good just offensively, like Dirk, pick and roll, post-ups, a lot of shooters around. Monte and Chandler, Parsons can run pick and roll. Monte and Chandler, Tyson Chandler, I can't say Chandler anymore, there's 2, can play pick and roll. Jameer can still hit threes. Devin Harris can still hit threes. Minu's going to come out and give him energy off the bench. I think this is a really good squad. Is this the last year of relevance for Dirk? Is this his last chance to actually win?
Yeah, I think he'll still be a good player until he retires, but not too much of a drop off. I mean, obviously age will catch up eventually.
Shooting
but,
is always the last thing to go.
Yeah, I think this is probably the last chance they have. Based off last year when they took San Antonio to 7, and the fact that they got Chandler Parsons, well, why not? This might be might be the year that they make some waves.
The closest to beating the Spurs of anybody last year. They did also get a game winner from Vince Carter.
That is true.
In that, which was one of the best games I saw all last year. That was awesome. So, not to say that can't happen again, but they took the Spurs to 7, and it was a nip and tuck series throughout. Can't see how that doesn't play out again. And like we said with the West, it all depends on matchups. If they get matched up with the wrong kind of team, like the Grizzlies, although the Grizzlies are probably a bad matchup for everybody, then it could be over in the first round, or they could go to the Western Conference Finals. You never know. Really fun team, though. One of the probably top 3 League Pass teams, I would say. If you're going to get that package where you can pick a bunch of teams, they're on there for sure. Another team that could be on there is the Toronto Raptors, who didn't make a huge impact. They surprised everybody last year. Nobody saw that coming. Everyone on that team seemed to make a jump, and they were really well coached, really good defensively. Kyle Lowry was a all-star, should have been an all-star. I think they're going to be the 3rd seed again because they're basically the same team. They re-signed everybody. Lowry, Patrick Patterson, Grievous Vasquez, DeRozan, Terrence Ross are still there. Valanciunas, Samir Johnson, they're all back. Added in with Lou Williams, who was hurt most of last year and really wasn't the same, but now with a full offseason and actually seemingly to be healthy, I think he'll be a really good part of that team with Lowry and Vasquez. Is a really fun point guard, shooting guard rotation. We got Greg Steensma and James Johnson, 2 guys that'll just come off the bench and do some dirty work, which every team needs. DeMar DeRozan made a jump. Lowry made a jump. Terrence Ross, I think he could be the next guy. Him and Valanciunas are guys that could make that jump this year. And I've heard a lot of hype about Valanciunas. He had a good World Cup. Ring the bell, because I've said that about 19 times. Every time you hear that, take a shot. Fun drinking game. That they're gonna try to mold him into like a defensive rim protector, cornerstone defense, Tyson Chandler, Dwight Howard kind of player. And I think that's his best role. Offensively, he can do some things. He can spark you. There was one game in the playoffs, I think it was against the Nets, where he had like 12, 15 points in the first quarter with all like post-ups and putbacks and dunks. He can do that for you, but I think he's most valuable when he's rebounding and when he's defending and shot blocking. So Amir Johnson does a little bit of that too, so that's a tough defensive combo. Amir Johnson also sometimes will play the small ball 5. They have Lucas Nogueira coming over from Brazil, who was their pick last year. He's just a ridiculous athlete, dude with a giant fro and giant arms, and he can shot block, and he's about 14 pounds, so that should probably improve. But if he can just come off the bench and block some shots, that'll be just fine. Patrick Patterson was really good. He was like their stretch 4. They traded for him middle of last year and was really big in the playoffs. So I think if, let's say, Lowry and DeRozan come back down to earth a little bit, I think Ross and Valanciunas will take that little step. I think Ross had a 50-point game last year. If they make the leap up and kind of balance it out, they're right back to where they were, and that's a 45, 44-ish win team.
You said, 3 in the East?
3 in the East.
Yep, 100%. I got the same thing going in my phone.
Who is their League Pass guy?
It's got to be DeRozan, based off highlights alone.
Yeah. I don't know, him and Harden, supposedly grew up together. He needs to, when they go to Houston or when Houston comes there, he needs to just have an FU Harden game and score 80 on it. That needs to happen. Because I've done it in NBA 2K15 or 14, and it feels fantastic. And he cannot, and Harden cannot guard him. So that needs to happen. DeMar, if you're listening, go in. Memphis Grizzlies. As I said, really tough team to play, and they didn't get any easier. They signed Zach Randolph to an extension. There was some talk that he might be on the way out, but they put their faith in the big guy and said him and Gasol are going to be their cornerstones for a little while longer. And it's an effective formula. Teams can just not stop the size and the rebounding and the post scoring of those two. It's a proven commodity, and they're going to try to surround them with shooters. Vince Carter they brought in, Vinsanity, as I mentioned, had a really good year shooting the ball last year. Still can really perform and was playing crunch time for the Mavs. He'll play crunch time for this team because Tayshaun Prince damn sure ain't doing it. They get Quincy Pondexter back, who was out all of last year, who was a really good two-way player, hit threes and play D. That's tough to come by. He'll do it. Courtney Lee is one of those guys as well. Tony Allen was moved from the starting lineup to the bench when they traded for Courtney Lee and really thrived. Like, playing those few less minutes just made him that much more intense on defense when he came in. He messed Durant up in that playoff series. They went to 7 with the Thunder in the first round, and a big part of it was Tony Allen. He would come in and just Durant would dread those minutes because he did not want to go up against him. And he's going to continue doing that. Looks like that's the plan. And Mike Conley, one of the best underrated point guards in the league that nobody seems to talk about. Not a whole lot to say. Not a sexy team, just efficient, effective, and I really enjoy watching them. But Marc Gasol is one of my favorite players.
Beast.
He's my league pass guy. I think he's still the best center in the league. Was injured a lot of last year. That's another thing is why I think they'll be better, because Marc Gasol missed like the first third of the season. What's the term for it? Who's your X factor on the squad?
Well, X factor, I'd have to go with Vince actually to see. I think he's an upgrade from Tayshaun. Pretty much, that's a lie. You know what I mean?
He fits the offensive scheme
exactly.
Much
better. He can still score, and obviously it's limited. It's not in the same quantity as it used to be, but I think he helps the team out definitely.
I think he averaged like almost 15 a game last year.
Yeah,
sneakily.
It was a quiet 15 for sure.
But he could shoot you into games. Like, he could have that crazy fourth quarter will hit 5 threes and you'll come back, and he can obviously still hit game winners. He did in the playoffs last year.
That's
he averaged 12, 39% from 3. Like, that's for a dude that took a lot of them. That's a really good percentage, and shot 40% the year before, 36 the year before that.
He's an upgrade at a position they needed the upgrade at, too.
And then they also get Pondexter back,
exactly.
So they don't need to pay Tayshaun that much, which is beneficial because he's on an expiring contract. If they can deal him to a bad team and get something back, it would be a big upgrade.
Think about how scary that'd be if this was the Tayshaun Prince that was blocking Reggie Miller back in the day.
That is like
team.
His career highlight. Like, more so than actually winning a title. It's just that one block that pretty much sealed the game for them. Talking about the Golden State Warriors, going from parallel opposites in terms of teams, like the grind them out, ugly Grizzlies, to the sexy three-point shooting Golden State Warriors. They had a good offseason, I thought. Added Sean Livingston, who was a much-needed upgrade at the backup point guard spot, who I believe was held by Tony Douglas, and then Steve Blake last year when they traded for him. He's had a really good year for the Nets last year. Was playing crunch time for them, was starting for them, was really like their primary ball handler. Leandro Barbosa they brought in, Brandon Rush to give him a little spark off the bench. Still have the same starting five. Their starting five was good last year. Iguodala wasn't as good as people thought. That's why they weren't as high seeded and ended up getting bounced in the first round. So that's the goal. The goal this year, they pay so much for that starting five, they were in the Kevin Love talks, is for Klay Thompson to take a bit of a jump, for Iguodala to play better, Harrison Barnes to embrace the bench role, which he really didn't do last year, and them for to stay healthy and to get to at least the second round of the playoffs, because this is not a team that is you're paying a lot of money for. You don't want them to get bounced in the first round. Their goals are higher. Their goals are, championship level goals. I'm being a little more realistic. But they decided that Mark Jackson was just not cutting it, and they signed Steve Kerr, first time head coach. Obviously was played for a lot of good coaches, i.e. Phil Jackson and Greg Popovich. What does Steve Kerr bring to the table, in your humble opinion?
Uncertainty, only because not only, this is a playoff team, it's a new head coach, but like you said, a first-time head coach. But apparently, all the guys who know what to talk about, like insiders and all that, he's supposed to be good, a good fit.
Yeah. Also a former GM,
so,
you should point that out.
That's true. So, he's definitely been around the game a lot, knows what he's doing, but, just needs to do it until it gets done. I just can't say.
It's kind of like with Jason Kidd last year, or Derek Fisher this year. Mark Jackson when he first started coaching and did a really good job.
Mark Jackson got a raw deal, though. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, I'm shocked he's not coaching again. I'm enjoying listening to him.
And Van Gundy.
Yeah, Mama, there goes that man. But I'm enjoying listening to him. But I wish he was, coaching. He was another guy that I wish would got the Nets job more, or the Wizards job more than
or the Laker job. Just saying.
Yeah, there you go. Just saying.
I think blame him for not wanting it.
I think some Knicks fans also wanted him. But, if you look at it, Kerr, like I said, was coached by great players. He's very smart. If you ever hear him talk about the game in his analyst role on TNT and NBA TV before this, very intelligent guy, understood things, great. Like, people look at him as like, oh, he's not a great player. Like, Mark Jackson was a really good player, like an all-star level caliber player. Jason Kidd, the same. Derek Fisher was never that caliber player, but he was on championship teams. So was Steve Kerr, I guess. The best players don't necessarily make the best coaches. You just need to be around the right people. And Kerr, it says a lot about him that he was on championship teams and he played a role on those teams. And coaches trusted him in big moments. And he was a GM of a very successful team in the Suns, and he put together a team that went to the Western Conference Finals. He's a smart guy, and I think he can figure this out. He's being put with a bunch of assistants that understand the game also. I believe Lawrence Frank is on his staff, which you said about Jason Kidd last year. That didn't work out too well. Mm-hmm. But you have smart players, you have veteran players. I think he'll do a good job, and that's why I think I have them this high. They got to get more out of Harrison Barnes because he's way too talented to be as bad as he was last year on both ends of the floor. Hopefully everybody stays healthy, especially Bogut. He's like the big X factor to me. Not a lot of teams have defensive centers as good as him. He just needs to stay there. Azili didn't play at all last year, and he was really good 2 years ago. So if they can get him as the backup, they'll be in good shape. We're moving on. Number 5, we're getting to the best of the best here. Chicago Bulls. I think they're the second seed in the East. It's not a popular opinion. I believe they're over-under or something like 50-something, which is a lot in my opinion. I take the under on that, but only due to some uncertainty with injuries. Noah seems to be always hurt. Rose, obviously, huge concern. I'm going to try not to spew any anti-Rose diatribe here, but you can't feel great about him as a Bulls fan. You're getting him back at the start of the year like you were last year. How'd that work out? The dude has had so many injuries all to the lower part of his body, and he's such an explosive guy. Like, he relies so much on getting to the basket. At a certain point, you have to just say, maybe it's gone. I'm not saying it is or isn't, because he looked decent in the World Cup and decent in preseason. But he also had to sit out for several of those World Cup games and those scrimmages and those practices and those exhibition games. That's not good. You're not playing against NBA competition in those games. Maybe once in a while you'll get an NBA point guard. But he didn't blow the world up. He didn't, show anything like any new wrinkles to the game. Like his 3-point shot looked okay. It was okay before. I think it's a ridiculous concept to think that he'll ever get back to the NBA form. But I think they set up a roster that they don't necessarily need him for 82 games. They brought in Aaron Brooks. Kirk Heinrich is back, so they have some point guard depth. Jimmy Butler and Tony Snell are there at the shooting guard. Pretty good 1-2 punch. You got Dunleavy and McDermott, who can both shoot the lights out at small forward, so you got that part of the game. Their big addition was Pau Gasol, and that just, I think, totally flips what they're going to do offensively and defensively. I think Pau's going to start at power forward. Him and Noah, great passers. You have Taj Gibson still coming off the bench, so that's a role he's used to. Taj can play backup 5. You can play the 4. Powell can play the 5 and the 4. Noah can play the 5. Just a lot of interchangeable parts. They have Nikola Mirotic coming over, who's a very well-hyped draft pick they had from a couple years back, finally coming over from Spain. He's a stretch 4, post-up rebounder type. Really exciting player, looks really good. I think even if Rose is 70% of what he was in the MVP year, this team will still win, almost 50 games. I don't know if they'll win 50, but with, the roster they have, with the coaching they have, it's hard to say that they're not the second best team in the East. And I'm excited to see it, even though I've never been a real big fan of this team, because they've been kind of a Heat rival. And Derrick Rose didn't deserve the MVP that year. I like watching Noah, as long as he's not playing the Heat. I like watching Powell. I like watching Gibson, except when he's not playing the Heat and trying to dunk on Dwayne Wade. Aaron Brooks is exciting. Jimmy Butler's been a player. So, I'm excited about this team. Dougie McBuckets. What does he add?
I don't know, man. I've been saying for such a long time, been waiting for him to not do what he did, like average.
He's been a bust.
Because he looks like,
but like as a
just
backup,
a slow white dude.
Yeah.
But
in this role, I think this is right for him.
Yeah, definitely. I think I don't think he'll get as much playing time, only because not taking away anything he did at Creighton, because the kid was fantastic. Obviously,
they built the system around him. It was his dad coaching him, for God's sakes. But
he still put the ball in the bucket.
He can still shoot, and that's an NBA skill, and that's all he's being asked to do.
Exactly. I think his minutes will be diminished just because this is with Thibodeau, this is a defense first team, which is interesting because they don't have Dang anymore. They lost some of the players that they had when they were matching up.
Butler's become a really good defender, though.
That's the thing. Jimmy Butler's gotten really good, especially his offensive game has evolved in Derrick Rose's absence. So Derrick Rose is actually coming back to a team that, at least on the offensive side, is better than he left.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
And you
Unfortunately for them, the Cavs have a super team too now.
Yeah, we'll talk about them in a second. And with Powell, you could always, he's not what he used to be, but you could always dump it to him and he'll get.
He's still one of the more skilled big men.
And you can just do him and Noah. Like, Noah's not a great offensive player either, but just the passing between those two and the floor spacing they could have.
They kind of pick up for each other. What one lacks on defense, the other,
Yeah, for sure. And I think they'll keep each other healthy, too, because neither of them will have to play, in theory, as many minutes, especially with Mirotic and Gibson. And I guess Nazim Muhammad
like
you could throw in there.
You could even put Powell at the 5 or Gibson at the 5, just to cut down on the minutes.
If you need offense, you could put Powell Powell at the 5 and see what he can give you. I think he's better at the 5, personally. I was hoping he'd go to a team that needed a center and he could, go in there and do what he does.
A lot of options for that team.
For sure.
Interesting to see.
Oklahoma City Thunder is my... we already talked about them a little bit earlier when we were talking about the Timberwolves, because we were just talking about their lack of depth and their need for another scorer. And I think that sums it up. They drafted Mitch McGary, number 21, over guys like Shabazz, Rodney Hood, P.J. Hairston, Bogdanovich, who I mentioned, Kyle Anderson, who's supposed to be good, Clanthony Early. There was a lot of guys that could have really helped them. They just drafted a slow white dude. Mitch McGary was really good 2 years ago, and he sat out an entire year with a back injury.
That's never good.
That's a waste
Those
of a draft pick.
don't really heal that well.
I made fun of their pick last year for what's his name? Who's their big white guy they took last year? Steven Adams.
Yeah, I don't know his name off the top.
Steven Adams. I made fun of that pick, and he ended up being really good. So maybe I'll bite these words. But Steven Adams and Mitch McGary athletically are not even close. It's like Kendrick Perkins, Serge Ibaka. That's how big of a difference it is. Steven Adams is really athletic, and I think he's going to be the starter over Perkins very soon. That's why they need to flip that Perkins contract into something. They were apparently in the Aflalo market this offseason. I don't know how that didn't happen. Like, that would have been the perfect guy. Would have got them over the top. I would have picked them to win it all, honestly, with Westbrook, Aflalo, and Durant. Like, that's the perfect guy who doesn't need the ball but can still score it, can defend, can pass, perfect teammate, great locker room guy. He would have put them over the top, and they didn't do it. What they did do is add Anthony Morrow. Good on ya. Now KD's out for the first 6 to 8 weeks, and it's going to be the Westbrook show. It's going to be a lot of Westbrook, a lot of shots. Over under 35 shots a game. Go.
Oh, man. Under just barely.
34, 33.
Probably.
Reggie Jackson is also banged up. Not as bad. He's got a bruised wrist, so he'll play, but it just will affect him a little bit. Not that he's a great shooter anyway. Right now on this starting depth chart, they have Andre Roberson as their starting shooting guard. He didn't even get minutes for them last year. Morrow is also hurt. He's got a sore ankle, so he'll probably miss a few games. Sounds like Jeremy Lamb will move up into that role, but he got benched real quick last year. They know what they have in him, and it's not good.
You may end up seeing Russell starting shooting guard.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to play Reggie and Westbrook because they're just their best two guards. It's just at some point. And they were playing crunch time a lot in the playoffs and a lot of the regular season last year, so that's not unheard of. But when you have to bring up some guys off the bench, it's going to be rough. Perry Jones is probably, is he going to start in Durant's absence?
I have no idea.
That's going to be terrible. Ibaka's going to have to step up. He is still a little bit banged up, but he should be good for the start of the season. I think Adams is going to need to make the jump, or a jump. He's going to need to be better. And he was a guy that was kind of a catalyst and spark off the bench. But he's just going to need to be, better in pick and roll. They're going to have to get him there. They're going to have to maybe get a jump shot out of him a little bit. Because otherwise, they're just not going to be any good. At least for the beginning of the season. That's why I have them ranked third in the West. Otherwise, they'd be first or second. But that first month and a half is just going to be, unless Westbrook can really put the team on its back, which I think is possible. Like, they're going to have a winning record. It's not going to be a 1-15. But
that's a lot of time to miss one of the best players.
And it's a lot of miles to put on Westbrook. Like, he's going to have to play almost the whole game for them to win.
Who has also missed time in the past himself.
Yeah, who was hurt a lot of last year. So I enjoy watching Westbrook, honestly, but in spurts. Like, he has those games where you just want to bury your head in your hands and be like, what are you doing, dude? You have Kevin Durant on your team. You're not going to have that for the first month and a half, 2 months. They need to make a trade, in my opinion. They're going to need to flip some of these contracts, whether it's a big deal like Pekovic, or just going out and just getting like a solid veteran like a Randy Foye on the Nuggets, who's like just lost in the mix. I think all it's going to take is like Jeremy Lamb and Roberson's contract, and you can get Randy Foye, who can play meaningful minutes, shoot threes, and play off those guys. Like, that's someone that can help them. A Corey Brewer would be great if they could get a hold of him. They'd have to move probably the either Collison or Perkins, but I think they have to make that deal. This front office gets praised so much. The last couple of years, they've given these guys nothing to work with, and it's going to catch up to them at some point. And it has the last two Western Conference Finals that they've been a part of. They just haven't had the horses to run with San Antonio. League pass guy? No, it's a rant. Okay.
Yeah.
Not that hard. Number 3, I have the Los Angeles Clippers, who I believe will be the second seed in the West, who were really, really good last year, even with Chris Paul missing a lot of time. They added some depth, especially in terms of bigs, with Spencer Hawes, Epke Udo, brought Glenn Davis back, and brought in not a big, but Chris Douglas Roberts, who played some good minutes for the then Bobcats, now Hornets. I think I've got this now. Last year, played with goggles too, and shout out to anyone that wears goggles. Matt Barnes had a really good year. He's their starting small forward. J.J. Redick, Jamal Crawford there man the shooting guard, and they brought in Jordan Farmar to back up Chris Paul. They're going to have to bring in another point guard. Farmar gets hurt way too much, and Chris Paul misses a decent amount of time himself. They're going to need another point guard in there. Don't really have any trade pieces to get one, but it's going to have to happen. Crawford does a decent amount of ball handling, so maybe they can handle it, but we'll see. Blake made the jump last year. I've said the jump a lot, but he made the jump last year into elite top 5 player status.
Is it enough, though?
That's what I was about to ask you.
I don't know if it's just execution. I think they need to do something, bring someone in, because look who you're playing against. The Spurs and the Thunder, you know what I mean?
I mean, last year they lost, I think, a lot of games because of the... DeAndre Jordan also made a huge jump last year. That deserves to be said. Under Doc Rivers, he was a great rim protector. His rebound numbers went way up. And I think he needs to do that again. Now, especially now, because I believe he's in a contract year. Those two are now going to get a little bit of rest, at least, because they had to play a lot of minutes because they just had no big guys. Glenn Davis was their only big guy, and they got him, pretty late into the season. Now with Spencer Hawes and Epke Udo, who's, I believe, a little bit banged up, but he'll be back. They're not paying him virtually anything. Those guys can at least give you something, at least give you a little bit, and let those guys sit out and take a breather, because they played a lot of minutes. They didn't get much from Reggie Bullock last year, who was their first-round pick. They took... I forget who they took this year in the draft, but he was very similar to the guy that Reggie Bullock is. I'm going to see if I can bring it up, but if they can get a little bit from him, that'll be helpful. Their bench, I think, is solid. Crawford is a perennial 6th man of the year candidate. Instant offense. Jordan Farmar was good last year, hit a lot of threes. And between Bullock and Douglas Roberts, they should give a little bit more wing depth. I think this is the core of a team that can beat the Spurs. They just have to play really, really well. Like they need to play virtually perfect. Blake needs to beat the hell out of Tim Duncan and just out-athlete him. Paul needs to prove that he's the best point guard and hit clutch shots. And
they got one thing working for him: age. Tim Duncan has to retire eventually.
You would think, right?
Eventually,
what I mean? Parker, Ginobili, and Duncan are gonna just get old, and they're gonna turn over into and pass the torch over to these young guys.
I feel like they've got another dude cooking in their farm system somewhere.
Well, his name's Kawhi Leonard, and he's really, really good.
No, we know about him. They're just sneaky like that.
That's what I mean. Like, those guys are going to go away, and then Kawhi's just going to become like LeBron. Like, it's stupid. So, we're not going to talk about them quite yet. I just think the Clippers have what it takes to beat them right now. It's just, they got to execute. J.J. Redick was really bad for a lot of last year. Like, he just couldn't make anything. And when you can't space the floor, it's gonna hurt. And Blake and DeAndre can match up with Splitter and Duncan. It's just a matter of, they're veterans now. Like, they've moved from, maybe not veterans, but they moved from young guys. I think last year
they had the playoff experience.
Last year. Now it's time to do it. Like, this is the year. Second year of Doc. No more, what's the fucking owner's name?
Sterling.
Yeah, no more Sterling shadow hanging over. I think that was big in the playoffs last year.
That's true.
That was big. Hanging over them.
Kind of hard to play for a dude you hate.
Yeah, they were talking about, like, boycotting games, like, in the playoffs. Like, this is the year. Like, they just got a new owner, new environment. They just got to punch this season in the face. The super team, as you call them, the Cleveland Cavaliers. This is going to be tough. They're the number 1 seed in the East, undoubtedly. There's still a lot of questions about this team. Like, don't get me wrong. It's just, at the end of the day, talent is just going to win out. LeBron, he's back. He's coming home. Yeah, he's okay. Cue the Skylar Gray song. They brought in Mike Miller and Sean Marion and James Jones. They're following the...
Can I just say, the people that follow him from team to team make me sick? Can I just throw that out there?
To be fair...
You could go to a team like Oklahoma City and help a superstar win their first, as opposed to riding the King's coattails. Yeah, I'd like to play with LeBron too, but come on.
Yeah. To be fair...
Sorry, rant.
No, I mean, that's totally acceptable. I can't believe nobody paid Sean Marion at all. Like, he's getting I think he's getting $1 million.
Sean Marion guarded LeBron fairly well that year that the Dallas Mavericks won.
Well, he's dipped a lot since then.
If you can't beat him, join him, I guess, though,
yeah,
right?
I guess. He's trying to win that second ring. Same with Miller and I guess he's got 2. James Jones. Just keep getting them checks because he's not going to get minutes. Then they traded for Kevin
He's a
Love.
Garbage time assassin, James Jones, though.
He is. Dude, there's that one year in the playoffs.
He had 12 points in about a minute and a half
There's that one year against the playoffs. I think we were playing the Bulls where he hit 5 threes in a quarter.
The finals last year.
And he basically won us the game. So, I'm not saying it's going to happen because that was 2 or 3 years ago, but he's still an assassin if he's wide open, which he will be. They traded for Kevin Love. As I said, Anthony Bennett, Andrew Wiggins, you're out of here. Nice knowing you. Kevin Love, welcome to the super team. Fit. Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, Deion Waiters. How does it all fit?
The only thing that is
and secondary question, does it matter?
Not really.
No,
when you
I don't
have
think
that,
so either.
Yeah, exactly. It's unreal to have Kevin Love. Look at his numbers.
Yeah.
Does he ever not have a double-double? Honestly, him and LeBron. It is what it is. I don't like him at all. I shouldn't say that, but it hurts me to say he's the best player. You know what I mean? But
scorned Kobe fan.
Yeah,
still can't get over it.
Exactly. This is sour grapes. It is what it is. But the fact that those two are on the same team, and then you still have Kyrie Irving, who's one of the best young players in the league. You know what I mean?
Who was the FIBA MVP?
Yeah. The only thing that's concerning, like I said, is some of the younger players who were drafted, the Waiters, Thompsons. They're gonna have to get used to. It didn't matter before. They were just young players. They could kind of do what they wanted. They were just fighting for their lives to get in the playoffs. Now, the pressure's up. This team has expectations to go to the finals.
Oh yeah.
So are they going to be able to play? Are they going to be able to accept being role players, or do they know how to play as a role player?
I've said from the beginning that Tristan Thompson is destined to be a really good role player. They were playing him starters minutes in Cleveland and expecting him to do big things because he's the 4th pick in the draft, which is a terrible draft pick, by the way. Can we just go back and revisit that? I would like to. That was 2011.
Expectations are inflated for him as well, like you said. When you get drafted that high, but like you're about to point out now, you have to take into account that draft. When it's a watered down draft, he may have been a role player pick in another draft.
Yeah,
which is
and probably should have been his skill set. If you just look at his skill set, it's just not it's not the kind of guy you take for. He was a guy that look at the guys taking after him. Jonas Valanciunas. It wasn't a great draft. Let's be fair. Kemba Walker, Alec Burks, the Morris twins, Kawhi Leonard sitting there at 15. Vucevic at 16, Shumpert at 17, Fareed at 22.
Still in the draft, Kawhi Leonard?
Yeah, Mirotic at 23, Norris Cole at 28, Bogdanovich at 31. I mean, these guys are all more, Chandler Parsons in the second round, these guys have all had more impact on their teams than Tristan Thompson. And I'm not dissing him. He's a talented player.
Definitely. I don't want to come off as that either.
He just needs to play that role. He's like a backup big. He's a decent rebounder. He's okay defender, and he's got some moves. But he's represented by LeBron, and that's going to get him pretty far, especially on this team. They want him to play center. They're going to get 0 rim protection, if that's the idea, because Kevin Love plays no defense. Tristan Thompson's not much better. they got to put Varejao and Brandon Haywood in there. And that's crazy to say because Brandon Haywood's about 90. But those guys at least can get their hands up and contest shots. Tristan Thompson's like 6'8". Like, I have concerns, like I said, but it doesn't matter because there's just so much talent. Irving, I don't think is as good as people think he is because he's terrible defensively, which nobody talks about because he puts up big numbers and wins all-star MVPs and Rookie of the Years.
On bad teams, though. So
his teams has never broken, like,
Exactly.
33 wins. He still doesn't score big numbers. Like, you think he doesn't even average 20. He's had big clutch shots, like in garbage games that don't mean anything. Like you said, they're finally getting a chance to do big things. Can Kyrie hit that big shot in the Eastern Conference Finals, then game 67 against the Celtics?
Against the teams that have already been eliminated from the
against the
playoffs.
teams that are sitting their starters.
Yeah.
Like, it's a big difference.
I think he's incredibly talented, though.
I think so, too. And I actually think he's a better fit as the third option.
He is,
rather
definitely.
than the number one. But
that's a pretty good third option.
yeah, I mean, it's probably the best third option in the league.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's gonna be like teams that go at him.
The thing is, too, for him, though, what's going to help him a lot, besides just the fact that you have LeBron on your team,
Yeah.
Kyrie looks to score. He was a score-first, point guard, and you can do that because LeBron can play any position he wants.
Yeah, and Kevin Love's gonna have to get used to that as well. He's gonna have to be used to being the second option, which he's never been. And I think he's the perfect kind of guy that would.
He doesn't
accept
seem
that.
like he minds.
No, like in the Olympics that year, he was just content being like the de facto rebounder, shoot threes guy. And then again, everybody does that in the Olympics, but that was his first time ever playing with like other all-stars, and he seemed to embrace it. And LeBron wanted him. Like, that should mean something to him. It's going to take time, like the Heat did with the Big Three, and get the chemistry. And David Blatt, their new head coach, we haven't even talked about, has never coached an NBA team, so that's going to take some time. But like I keep going back to it, like talent wins out. And even though maybe they're not going to blow everyone out of the water right away, by the end of the season they're going to be scary. And they're making it to the finals because they have the best player in the world, probably the 6th best player in the world, and the 19th. Deion Waiters is a big X factor for me. I don't know what he is, and him and Kyrie don't get along, which I think is a big no-no. But
Then what he's going to be is traded.
well, I would be okay with that, honestly. I think they can flip him for something. I think he'll have value. And I think he'd be so much better away from Cleveland. He was another pick that, like, I think that was the 2012 draft. If we want to look at that real quick, that was a bad draft pick. Like, going back and looking at the guys taken after him real quick, he was taken number 4. Damian Lillard, number 6. Terrence Ross, who's been good, at number 8, better. Drummond at 9. I mean, like I said, not a great draft, but just those two guys definitely stand out as
Sullinger.
Yeah, I mean,
There's some good players in that draft that have had,
yeah, even going down a little bit ways to Terrence Jones at 18. He's been good. Like that. I mean, I get they. Who are you looking at?
I saw a Plumlee in there.
Oh, there was a Plumlee in there, I think.
Teague.
Marquise Teague.
Oh, Miles.
Yeah, Miles Plumlee. That would have been better. I mean, I'm not saying Deion Waiters is a bad player. I think in a different situation he could have been much better, but I get they already have a point guard in Kyrie, so maybe they want to take him. You couldn't take Drummond, like.
Marcus Teague went to Kentucky too, right? That was their whole starting 5, which is almost every year
that was
nowadays.
The Anthony Davis year. So yeah, I mean, it's it's definitely the most interesting plot of the season is to seeing how well the Cavaliers do and what they look like and the new Big Three and all that. So I think I said this earlier. If the Heat aren't going to win the title and they're not, then I'll be rooting for LeBron. I'm not a bandwagon fan. I didn't follow him over the Cavs and buy a bunch of Cavs stuff.
He's wearing a Heat hat as we speak.
It's
He's
true.
not
I
BSing.
am also wearing a LeBron shirt, but only because it matches the hat. But the number one team is still the champs. The champ is her.
See ya.
And it's San Antonio Spurs. I mean, they didn't do anything. They are the same team. They're still the best team in the league. Tony Parker, Danny Green, Kawhi Leonard, the MVP of the finals, who should only get better. And Duncan and Splitter and Diaw and the whole gang.
Patty Mills.
Although he is hurt and he's gonna miss like the first
That is unfortunate.
3 to 4 months, which is like if you were gonna poke any slight hole in them, would be that is that Patty Mills, who was a huge spark for them off the bench, is gonna miss some time. But it's the Spurs.
Corey Joseph looked pretty good too.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
the funny thing. Like,
Yeah, he'll probably come in and be awesome. Like that's the thing. Like Kyle Anderson was like hyped up before the draft as like a, kind of a sneaky sleeper, like potentially future Boris Diaw kind of passer, big man, stretch 3-4.
That's a lot of adjectives right there.
I went hard, and people were like, "Yeah, people are gonna like sleep on him. He's gonna get passed up. People are gonna regret it. He's gonna be a really good player." And of course, the Spurs pick him. Like I think I'm in my NBA Live, NBA Draft Live Journal, which you can go back and read right now on TKOTalk.com. You can see that I think my exact reaction was, "Oh, of course." Like he's such a Spurs guy. He fits exactly what they want to do, and I think he's going to play minutes for them, especially because they rest their starters so often. Diaw, I'm a little concerned about because he played so many minutes last year and then went right into Team France and was like their big go-to guy since Parker didn't play, and also got a little out of shape between then and now. Shocking, right? Diaw, that never happens. Splitter, I think, carved out a really nice niche for himself last year and went from like the starter, who a lot of people thought was overrated, to a real bona fide, contributor, offensively and especially defensively. So, if they miss time, the starters, that is, their bench guys are going to step up, and they're well coached, and Kawhi Leonard's going to be awesome. He's my pick for League Pass guy, because there's moments, especially in the finals, both years actually, that the Heat faced them, where I'm like, why is this dude not like the best player in the league? Like, you just watch him, and he's hitting floaters, he's hitting threes, he's like posting up, he's locking down like best players on the Heat.
He came on the first year, and you're just like, wow, can he get better?
He was a starter his rookie year. And just has gotten better and better since then. Like, who starts in their rookie year for a title contender? Like, we mentioned Tayshaun Prince earlier. Like, that's the only situation I can think of. Unless you're, like, the number one draft pick, like back in the day when Magic Johnson was picked number one or something. James Worthy, actually, was put right into those Magic Johnson teams. But recently, like, that just doesn't happen. And he made so many people feel stupid for not taking him. Like, the Pacers actually picked him, traded him on draft day for George Hill. People don't remember that. But let's be honest, like Popovich and Duncan and all these guys are a big part of why he's as good as he is.
True.
But let's say that wasn't a part of it, and he went with Paul George. Nobody is scoring on them ever. Like, man, that'd be amazing. I'm so glad he's not in the East, but he still killed us in the finals, so it doesn't matter. Any other last final thoughts? Who's is your title game Cavs Spurs like everyone else?
Yeah, it has to be. Only because the Thunder are just kind of seem like kryptonite to the Spurs for some reason.
If it wasn't those two,
the Thunder and the Cavs.
The third team would be.
I don't see anyone beating the Cavs.
No, I don't either.
I just can't see the Bulls doing it.
It would be so amazing if the Heat did it.
I root for them only because you like them, but I just can't see anyone beating the Cavs.
It won't happen. If the Pacers were all still healthy and together, I honestly think they would have made it. It's like the classic case of like these guys that have all played together, team chemistry, defense first, small town team beating the juggernaut. Like it's like the perfect underdog. The team I could see throwing the wrench in the plans is the Clippers.
If Paul George came back for the playoffs, or let's say
he's just not going to be the same.
A little bit before the playoffs, he gets in shape. Do you think they can give them a run for their money?
No, because I don't even think they're going to be in playoff
That's
contention.
the problem. But say they sneak into the 8th spot, just hypothetically.
They're not going to upset them in the first round. I mean, it'd be exciting.
Does it go?
Oh yeah,
more than 4 games?
Probably
Is what I'm
goes.
saying.
Probably goes 7. I mean, the Heat the first year went to I think 6 games with the Sixers. No, we went 5. We went 6 games with
The Bulls, I thought. That was right?
We went 5 with the Bulls.
The Pacers, wasn't it?
Yeah, we went 6 with the Pacers. Went 6 with the Celtics.
But then you guys,
Yeah, and then we just got
it together. That was such a long time ago, I can't remember. You guys played the same team so many times.
The East was just like the same 5 teams. Those are good days. LeBron on the Heat, good times. Young Dwayne Wade. Anyway, I think the Clippers could throw a wrench in the plans for the Spurs. Like, if the Spurs all of a sudden get old, Kawhi doesn't make as big a jump, Blake makes a bigger jump, I could see them doing it. That would be awesome. I think, Blake and...
Switch it up. That'd be an exciting finals.
Yeah.
We're pretty much agreeing the Cavs are going to be in there.
Yeah.
The Cavs Clippers, that'd be pretty exciting.
Yeah. I think...
Good matchups. Kyrie, Chris Paul, LeBron, Blake, DeAndre, DeAndre and Kevin Love.
We've gone almost 3 hours with some stuff being edited out, so it'll probably be about 2.5. Rookie of the year, Jabari.
Yeah.
Coach of the year.
The dude who's taking the Cavs job.
Yeah.
It could have been me.
Yeah, exactly.
At this point.
I'm going to go Steve Clifford on the Hornets.
Okay.
MVP.
LeBron?
I don't think they'll give it to him.
I think that's such a nice story.
Just like the first year with the Heat, they won't give it to him because he's got too much help.
Yeah, but he's coming back home. You don't think they're going to soak that up?
I think it's Blake.
That's it. I
think it's time.
That's a nice pick. I'll tell you that right now.
Blake... It'll be hilarious if it was Westbrook. He just willed his way to it. No, man, I got this. Dark horse, Steph Curry.
If he stays healthy, that's the only problem.
You gotta think he's got that. Remember the year where Durant all of a sudden became the guy?
Yeah.
I think that's that. I mean, maybe not, but I could see it. Actually, no. Readjusting my pick.
How about Chris Paul? He's always in the discussion.
Yeah, he's always second or third, though.
He's the man at the helm of that.
I just think it's time that Blake takes him as the face of the team.
Okay.
He's been slowing down a bit. Old CP. Josh McRoberts.
That's a lock.
MVP. Most improved. How about that?
Okay.
That's a stupid award.
Yeah, it is.
It's usually a first year or second year player that make the jump from the rookie year. So there really aren't any candidates because last year's rookie year sucked.
Most improved. I think there's way too many players for me to even think of right now. Anthony Davis. How about that? Because he was good, and
I think he won last year.
You can't win it more than
one. I mean, you can.
Kawhi, because I think he's going to be the guy on that team this year.
Yeah, that's a good pick.
Even though they're not going to get you don't give superstars most improved. So
that's a good pick.
Stupid award, said.
And I think they'll want to give him something.
Kobe, because he didn't play last year.
I mean, an improvement over nothing is a big improvement.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm just going through and trying to find someone. I'll go with the Greek Freak.
Good pick. I really wish I could think mine through more.
I just looked through and he was the first one that came up. Or Tim Hardaway Jr. Also upset. Biggest superstar likely to get traded.
Rondo has to be.
Rondo. Or I feel like there's somebody else. There's got to be somebody else. Hibbert.
Okay.
Expiring deal. if that team falls apart, they might just want to tank.
Maybe.
I feel like there's one other question.
Scoring title?
I don't know. Fucking Durant missing time has opened up.
How many games do you have to play to be eligible? That's the only thing.
I mean, I think he'll be eligible. Missing a month and a half is going to put him at a pretty big disadvantage.
It's not total points, though. It's points per game, isn't it?
I thought it was total points.
Well, either way.
Well,
if it's total points, then he ain't winning it.
No. All right, let's say it is total points. Who wins?
Total? Oh, man, that's tough.
Westbrook. No.
You know who I'm going with.
Melo. I'm taking Melo.
Oh, I wasn't.
Oh, yeah, you're going Kobe,
Yep.
obviously. I just think Melo is going to be on a non-playoff team with a lot of non-scorers.
Yeah. You literally just described Kobe, too.
Fair. 6-man.
Ooh. Whoever the Spurs want it to be?
Ginobili, I guess. I think this is really good radio.
This part just gets edited out. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's true. Who is the 6th man on Sean Livingston? Probably. Yeah, no, that's not going to be it. Not a bad pick, though.
Jamal Crawford, just because?
Yeah, I mean, we said
Crawford
that,
or Ginobili,
said
they
that
just
earlier.
alternate.
I know,
cares?
pretty much. Or like back in the day, it was Jason Terry.
Yeah.
You know, I got it. Isaiah Thomas.
Wow.
3-point guard set. They're gonna run it.
All right.
I mean, Bledsoe could get hurt. That's the thing, is Bledsoe could get hurt, and then he'll just end up starting, so that doesn't really count.
How about Reggie Jackson?
Not bad. He could be a starter,
That's
though.
the only problem.
That's the thing. I mean, I guess Jamal Crawford started a bunch of games, but did he? Yeah, I think he did win. J.R. Smith was not the winner. He won the year before.
You kind of got to do that pick at like the All-Star break, so you know.
I got it.
By the time they change.
Vinsanity.
As you do the motorcycle.
Vinsanity
Celebration.
is the pick. Nick Young's gunning for it. You hear that?
Swaggy.
When your aspirations are to be the best guy off the bench, like, what's that really saying?
Hey.
Shouldn't he want to be like the starting small forward? Shouldn't that be what he's saying?
Hey, man. Be the best at whatever you do, I guess. I don't know.
Be the best you can be.
We need him.
What great words to leave you guys with here after the second edition of the way too long Rob and TKO NBA preview podcast. We'll be back next year, and maybe we'll do a recap of the season like I wanted to do last year and then just didn't because we're busy. So keep it locked. TKOTalk.com. Follow me on Twitter at TKOTalk.com, spelled LKDOTCOM is spelled out. That's all I should have said. I didn't need to embarrass myself like that. And we will see you guys very soon, or at least I will, in the Twitter world. Adios.